I got a new theme tune for us this week, Chris.
Seriously?
Yeah,
oh, nice.
It's really good. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, lay it on for me. Let's go.
It goes like this. Hello and welcome to the show. It's James Bond Radio.
That's amazing. That is so good.
Thanks, man.
Did you just come up with that on the spot, or have you planned this all week?
I've been working on it hard for the last 2 weeks, and I thought it was finally ready. In fact, I've been working on it longer, but I wasn't ready to unleash it. And then this week I was ready, and I thought I'd premiere it for our listeners. What do you think?
I love it. I think we should use it every podcast now. Just get rid of that old John Barry nonsense. We've got Mr. Tom Sears doing this stuff.
Damn right. You're listening, Eon Productions, eh? Anyway, I'm Tom Sears, and I'm joined by my wonderful friend Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
And this week we are going to be talking about the villains of Bond, which is probably a long time coming, isn't it? It's a big topic, this one.
Yeah, well, we did the Henchman one not too long ago, and we had a lot of fun doing that, and it was interesting that we decided to do that before the villains. But the villains is one I know we've both been looking forward to. I think it could be a bit of an epic. And so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Podcast 34 as well. So
absolutely,
we're building them up, aren't we? Building them up a little bit.
Absolutely, indeed. So before we crack on with the episode, make sure you come and join us on Facebook. Just put James Bond Radio into the search. Come and join us on Twitter, which is @JamesBondRadio. And also come and join us on the website, jamesbondradio.com, where we've got some delightful blog posts and the This Week in Bond news roundups from over in Station C, Linda Zoo, keeping us up to date with everything Bond related. And also you can leave us a speak pipe, whether that's a quote or whether you have a question or some kind of trivia stuff. That's always good. You just press the leave us a voicemail button over on the right hand side of the website. And last but not least, come and give us a lovely glowing 5-star review on iTunes, because that helps us grow the show and find more listeners and just look generally more popular. That's really nice, isn't it?
Which is what we try to do a lot, don't we? We try and be as popular as we can.
Absolutely. So let's roll the theme tune and then we'll get cracking with this week's show.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Okay, so we're back in the game indeed, and we've had some fun this week, haven't we? Because the James Bond Radio T-shirts have been delivered to a lot of people. Not everybody so far. I still don't have mine.
No.
And
I think mainly people in the UK have been lucky to receive theirs first, but I think most people abroad are still waiting on tenterhooks, I believe.
And might I say, that T-shirt you're wearing looks very fetching, Chris. Do you want to give it a little display for the viewers?
I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's very comfortable. It's heavyweight cotton, so Ian Fleming would approve. It has a lovely logo, an avatar, some people might say, and a cracking design, if I do say so myself, with a lovely little title there. So. I'm obviously quite proud to wear it. I do have to admit, though, after we saw some of the JBR listeners posting pictures of them, I mean, all of them look fantastic. All of them. We saw some nice poses of people with T-shirts on. We saw them rocking it in casual, a bit of Daniel pouting going on. You know, we saw some really good stuff. But there were a few comments about the way it smelt. And I do admit that I am currently wearing James Bond Eau de Toilette, because it did have a faint smell of vinegar, shall we say. A faint whiff, but a bit of 007 spray and smelling beautiful now.
Now, is that the 007 for the gentleman or 007 perfume for the lady that you're wearing?
Well, I actually did one side on one and one side on the other, so
very nice.
The best of both worlds.
we have heard reports of a slightly vinegary scent of the T-shirts. I guess that must be something to do with the printing process or something that they've done there. But I imagine as soon as you whack it through the wash, that smell will go away. Yeah. Fingers crossed, anyway. You don't want to smell vinegar, do you? That's pretty gross.
No, not really. Walking down the street, people will probably step to the side and let you go through and be like,
indeed.
ooh. Didn't smell too good.
But I always imagine that Donald Pleasance's Blofeld would have smelled a little bit of vinegar. Do you know what I mean? He'd have a little. He'd have a little pong about him, wouldn't he? I think.
I think you're right, and maybe that's why these were made vinegar scented, just to follow in Blofeld.
It was all intentional
sort of
from the start.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's a cracking thread going over on Facebook with everybody posting photos of themselves wearing their JBR t-shirt. We've seen Agent Golden Voice Simon Woolley pulling off his perfect George Lazenby one knee gun barrel pose. We've seen Antoinette Michelli rocking the Monica Bellucci look with the shades. We've seen Jeff Silence. Have you spotted how buff Jeff Silence is? Jesus Christ.
He looks pretty ripped, doesn't he? Yeah,
he certainly does. I've only ever seen the little tiny picture of him on Facebook, so I was impressed. I imagine he had to order the extra large to fit those biceps in there.
I think he probably did.
Good stuff. So we hit a little milestone this month, didn't we? Or last month, should I say?
And what exactly was the milestone?
That milestone, Chris, was 11,000 downloads in the space of 1 month, which is our best ever numbers yet, which is really cool. So again, another milestone for us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for really tuning in. It's all good. It's growing every single month by the looks of things.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks a lot to everyone out there. It's good news, and I wonder if we'll break that at some point. I reckon as it gets to Spectre, there'll be lots of stuff to chat about, and hopefully we'll keep the numbers going. So thanks everyone.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, so in the world of Spectre this week, we've got some stuff to talk about. And as per usual, if you want to skip all the Spectre news because you're trying to avoid any spoilers and all that kind of stuff, fast forward to
14 minutes and 8 seconds.
There it is. Okay, so you're in the naughty door as per usual if you've listened to these ones before. So what have we got this week then, Chris?
So we got quite a lot, actually. A lot of it is to do around the filming. Now, there's been quite a lot recently on sort of online about the first unit, which has been shooting in Rome quite a lot. So the second unit, I think, are still polishing up Austria, although they might have wrapped by now. But basically, the first unit, we've seen a few photos, a couple of even videos, and lots of sort of messages and stuff going to and fro. So basically, Daniel and co have been filming in Rome. Now, there is a scene where Daniel, or should I say James Bond, is attending a funeral. Now, could this possibly be Judi Dench's M's funeral? What do you think?
That's a very good point. I would say, that's a good point, actually, because we don't see that, do we? All we see in the aftermath of that is him getting the bulldog on the roof, and then that's it. So maybe it could be. Yeah, that's a good point, man. I hadn't considered that. Yeah.
It could be, or possibly another 00, but a la fun, or like the sort of, or similar to Thunderball, where it's Jacques Boutoir and you think it's James Bond. I don't know, but I think it could be M, and if it is M's funeral, then he's got to get her message across somehow, because we think, I mean, this is all, obviously it's speculation, isn't it? So we don't quite know what's going to happen, and it might not be M's funeral, but if it is, I think that's going to have some heavy part to the storyline.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Or at least influence him. Yeah,
and a good callback to Thunderball, like you said. That's the old Thunderball pre-title sequence with the funeral there. So yeah, good point.
Yeah. So in addition to that, there's also been they've been doing the main car chase in the film in Rome. So this is where we got Bond in his DB10 and Mr. Hinks, we believe, is in the Jag. Now this has been shot at night, and the car chases along the banks of the River Tiber. It sounds as if it could be pretty epic. I mean, I've seen a few photos. It's looking pretty amazing. There are reports that the cars are taking a right beating from the roads, because the roads are quite old and they're not all that smooth. So I think these poor Astons and Jags are getting sort of written off almost left, right, and centre. But
I think that goes without saying when it comes to Bond, doesn't it? They're always not going to fare that well.
No, exactly, no. But no, by all sort of, from everything we've heard so far, it could be really good. But we have seen some of the first shots of Mr. Hinks now behind the wheel, And he's looking pretty mean. He has got a bit of a Jason Statham about him in the photo that I saw. He's wearing like a flat cap and he's holding a gun and he's got kind of a goatee and he's built like anything. And I mean, it looked good. He looks mean and he looks like a hard mother. It did have a bit of the Stafe feel to it, I must say. But,
well, that little shot that's been released. So basically, just to clarify, you've got Hinks sitting in the passenger seat of the car. Like it's shot from the back seat. He's kind of looking behind him, pointing the gun at whoever's in the back seat. Now, you won't have listened to this because I did it by myself, but the little Spectre behind the scenes thing they released, the first one, with the little rundown episode I did of it, you could just about see that happening in some of the footage. You could see that Hinks was in the front seat, and then there's Madeline Swan in the back seat. So that's where it's from. So it's exciting to kind of see him. And I tell you what, I'm relieved about. I'm kind of relieved that he doesn't have some like big ridiculous look. Like he's not wearing like a bowler hat with an eye patch or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You didn't want that, did you?
No, I didn't. Well, maybe the bowler hat, but just not the eye patch or the silver teeth or something.
And then there was the other bit of news which I saw you had written about M's office, and you'd had I think you wrote the tagline something like "Just look how flipping good M's office looks," or words to that effect.
That's it. So there's been the second behind the scenes.
Don't talk about it.
No. I won't tell you anything. So there's the second behind the. Just to fill in our listeners, Chris is not watching any of the behind the scenes featurettes. So I'm
trying not to.
And I'm reporting on them solo. So there's things I've seen that Chris hasn't seen yet. But anyway, the second behind the scenes featurette showed a little bit of the footage of M's office. And to be honest with you, it's no different to the end of Skyfall, M's office. No. It's got that classic Bernard Lee style office look about it. Yeah. But it's just good to see that we're going to get an M's office scene. And I'm so excited about
didn't
that. It really, really did. But yeah, there was a lot. I know you didn't want to watch the first behind the scenes one. No. And to be honest, I feel like you could watch that and it wouldn't spoil a thing. The second one, however, you probably wouldn't want to watch that one. No. So it's pretty too intense on that one. But yeah, some good stuff and it's exciting. Well, I'm excited for it.
So long as I'm hearing that it's good, that's enough to keep me going. So that's cool. That's really cool. So in addition, we've got remember we talked about the German actor Detlef Both. Who's got such a cool name. Yeah. So he was interviewed after he rapped and said a bit more about his role and his scene in Spectre. He basically said pretty much what most of us know already, that it was a showdown piece on a cable car in Austria. I think we'd seen a couple of photos of cable cars and a lot of people sort of commented on that. But apparently he didn't have any scenes with Bond himself. So we know there's a chase, we know there was a showdown, and we know Bond wasn't involved. What we do know is this guy was kind of like a sniper, and there was a sort of a showdown piece. So, and last time we mentioned that Q was involved in the scene. So this is Q out in the field. So if he's definitely not with Bond in that scene, then it could just be a scene purely with this sort of villain or henchman and Q. Now that's very interesting because we've never had anything like that before.
And do you know what? I'm excited about Q in the field. Like a lot of people, like we said before, I don't really want to see Moneypenny running around with a gun. I don't want to see M running around with a gun. But Q, I kind of don't mind. Like I feel like, in reality, if he had to go and meet Bond out in the field and give him his gadgets, he would probably send an assistant. But I can sort of forgive that. I kind of like it. I loved seeing Q out in the field in License to Kill. I think that was amazing.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
I feel like that's cool. And again, I enjoyed their scene in Skyfall at the museum. I thought that was a nice way of doing things. So if we're going to see Q delivering his gadgets out in the field, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, me too, definitely. Well, it'll be interesting to see what turns up. We still don't know for definite whether that's part of the pre-titles or in the middle of the film or the end. We don't know yet. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. So that's the main sort of filming news at the moment. In terms of other news outside of Spectre, we heard recently that Comic Relief, this is in the UK, so for our listeners outside the UK, apologies for this, but basically Comic Relief in the UK, that is on March the 13th. starting from 7 p.m. It sounds like I'm advertising it, but the reason I'm saying this is because they are doing a James Bond sketch with Daniel Craig, obviously, as James Bond. I'm not sure how long or how short it'll be, but it'll be worth checking it out.
Well, I tell you what, Chris, I've recently just been made aware of some other news regarding this. So I suppose just to be clear, Comic Relief for those outside the UK is kind of like a fundraising thing that you do every couple of years, where loads of comedians get together and they do this big funny show, and it's all about collecting money for charity and all that kind of stuff. So that's Comic Relief. So there was a little tweet by a good friend of James Bond Radio, Sir Roger Moore, no less, saying, I have a little secret for you. Daniel Craig is not the only James Bond appearing in Comic Relief. So there's going to be a double Bond header, or maybe even more. We don't know. But at least Daniel and at least Roger are going to be appearing as James Bond in this Comic Relief sketch. Yeah. Now that excites me.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm already thinking, I just want to watch it now. That sounds so good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just imagine how there's so many things they could do with it. Like, it would be, you got Roger Bond, Daniel Bond. I mean, if they brought in some of the others as well, that would be awesome. But I don't know what they do with it. Maybe, I don't know how they do with it, but it'll be good. And Roger's always up for a laugh and sort of taking the mickey out of himself, isn't he? So I think it'll be good. I'm
excited, man. I was excited enough to see Daniel as Bond in Comic Relief, but knowing that Roger is going to be in it as Bond as well, exciting times. Yeah, maybe it'll be like Casino Royale '67. You never know.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. So a couple of other things. So the Bond set decorator, Anna Pinnock, she won an Oscar for her work on the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is good. So well done to her. She's working in Spectre at the moment.
Good stuff.
Did you see the Grand Budapest Hotel?
I did, yeah.
Ralph Fiennes, awesome in it. Yeah. So good in it.
Yeah,
he's brilliant. Movie. I do like him. So the Bond in Motion exhibit in London. Now that was due to finish, I think, at some point this year. But basically, it's going to now stay there until further notice because it's been so popular. They don't want to sort of get rid of it. And they're also going to be updating it. So as filming wraps or certain scenes wrap, certain vehicles or perhaps gadgets as well will be in the Bond in Motion. So, maybe in a few months' time we might see the DB10 or we might see the Jag or some of the Land Rovers, whatever.
This is good news all around. So we've already been to the exhibition. We saw it down in Bewley before it went to London, and it was cool. And then we've got the new Spectre vehicles will be showing up there. I think that's good news. If the exhibition's doing well, that's always a good sign because that means more Bond stuff will happen in the future. It's all
definitely.
Good. Yeah.
It's not that. What was that silly rumor someone was saying about? Oh yeah, the next one's going to be the last Bond film ever. I mean, I suppose you get these with every Bond film, but it's like, where's that come from? And like, it's just silly.
Who said that? I didn't hear that. Remember who said that?
I think someone said it on the Facebook page, but it's just a load of twaddle. I don't know.
Never.
I don't know what.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. Never. Speaking of the Facebook page, there was an interesting post about. I mean, we don't need to really hark on about this too much because. Basically, it's about future potential Bonds. Obviously, Craig's still got another one after this. We're still, light years away, really, before we have to start thinking about it. But there was a post about the guy who's in the remake of The Saint. Or I think it's a TV series, the American TV series of The Saint. Is that right?
There was
Adam Rayner, I think his name
They made a pilot for it, but it didn't get picked up. To be honest, it looks a bit shit when you look at it. It looks like a cheap and nasty TV action series. Yeah. But it did feature a little cameo from Sir Roger, so that was worth a note.
That's true.
And the lead actor playing Simon Templar in that, a fella called Adam Rayner, is a 37-year-old British actor. He kind of looks like he could maybe pull off the Bond look. He's got the kind of tall, dark, and handsome thing going on. So he's worth checking out. I know some of our Facebook chums have piped in with their choices. So we've got some rather interesting choices cropping up, haven't we?
Yeah, there was someone, Antoinette Michelli posted a picture of someone who I didn't actually know who he was, but I liked your comment that he had like a Lego shaped head.
It's funny. She posted the picture and then nobody seems to know who he is apart from Antoinette and Simon Woolley, and everybody else is like, "Oh, who is this guy?" And they just keep posting pictures of some of them half naked, and nobody seems to know who the guy is. So Antoinette, let us know who is this dude that you're into.
Indeed. And there was another guy called James Norton. Now, this is another one that's been posted by JBR listener James Roberts, who said his mother raves about him. So, he had an interesting look, actually, James Norton. Like, facially, he had an interesting look. Maybe he's a bit more of the right age now than the Adam Rayner guy, because obviously by the time Bond comes around to filming, it'll be early 40s for him, whereas this other guy was a bit younger, so it might be worth checking him out as well.
Do you know what? I've got a feeling in my undercarriage that another one, yeah. That obviously Daniel's contracted to do Bond 25, and that's as far as it's going to go. I think he's going to come back for one more. Because he's been so successful, and they love him so much. I feel like they would do a Connery and be like, "Here you go, Daniel. Here's £1 billion. Just do one more. Come back." And I think they'll try and push for one more. I reckon.
And you know what? I think he'll probably like it because he's had a lot. He's probably, out of any other actor to play Bond, he's had more control over the film than any other previous Bond, because
Absolutely.
he's had says in with directors. He's had says on the script. I'm sure, he'll come up with lots of ideas. He wanted to be involved with the character as much as possible. I know a lot of the others did as well, but it seems like Daniel's been given a lot more free rein and input, shall we say, with Bond compared to previous actors. So he's on a good, from his point of view, he's doing all right. He got a nice little bonus after Skyfall, I think. But obviously, money aside, he's getting a lot of creative pleasure out of it, and he gets to be James Bond. So.
Well, that's it. Yeah, no, I think maybe that they've learnt from the sort of mistakes that Cubby made and Harry made with Sean, in the sense that they sort of, there was all that argument about money and all that kind of stuff. So maybe they've kind of looked at that and thought, this time we're going to play it a different way and really give him kind of, a good grip on Bond and what Bond could be. So yeah, that's my prediction. I reckon he's going to stick around for a little bit longer than
I think that's,
they say.
Yeah, I think that could be a safe bet, but we'll see. Because what is he now? He just had his birthday, didn't he? Was it 43rd?
47, I think.
47, sorry, 47. What am I saying? 43rd, yeah. 47th birthday, that's right.
Yeah.
So if he's just had his 47th birthday, we've got two more, so it'll be pretty much 49.
Yeah.
Around that. So he could be hitting sort of, 52, 53 if he does another one. That's only 5 years away from A View to a Kill Roger territory.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, but I guess we'll see. It depends if they do the 2 years or the 3 years between it or not. But I've got a feeling it would be that big stack of money on the table, depending on how successful the next two are. Yeah, but that's my prediction anyway.
Yeah, and I think they'll do pretty well. So the only other bit of news, really, well, it's kind of listener news, really. We had a message from JBR listener Lee Bolden, who showed us a lovely picture of his forearm, which happened to have a James Bond tattoo with the family motto, Orbis non sufficient, on his forearm. So, yeah.
Very nice. That's dedication for you, Lee. I'm impressed with that. I'm too precious about myself to get any tattoos. But if I was going to get a tattoo, that would be a good one to get.
Yeah, I'm gonna get. I might copy him and get one on my butt cheek, and then I'll get the 007 logo on my other butt cheek. What do you think?
That's good, man. Maybe we should all do that. All JBR listeners club together. We'll have a little secret JBR tattoo club where we get our asses tattooed with Bond paraphernalia. That would be good fun.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
Anyway, look at what you've started, Lee. Look at what you've started.
Exactly. Craziness. So that's about it. So have we had any emails or anything from any of our listeners?
We certainly have. We've heard from good old Charlie Hunt. He wrote in and he said, "Hey, Tom and Chris, my speak pipe isn't working, so I'm sending this as an email." So there we go. That's a great introduction. Okay. Is there anything in Bond that is often unanimously agreed upon as being great, but you personally don't like? For example, for me, Live and Let Die is often regarded highly by Bond fans and is seen as one of Roger's best, but in my opinion, I find it slightly dull and it is one of my least favourite films in the series. I would love to know if there is an equivalent like this for you guys. Keep up the great podcast, and here's for hoping Roger will make an appearance on this show. Cheers.
Thanks, Charlie. Charlie Hunt is a cool name as well, isn't it? Charlie Hunt is a bit of a sort of secret agent type name. I like that. It
does, doesn't it? It's like I could imagine him being on the team in Mission Impossible.
He can, exactly, yeah. Alongside Ethan.
Yeah. Oh, that's why I feel like that. Yeah, of course, it's Ethan Hunt, isn't it? Yeah, Charlie is his brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. What's your take on that then? What do you think?
So something that's unanimously agreed upon as good, but I feel is bad.
Well, everyone seems to love Die Another Day, don't they? And I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's not true.
No.
I would say I don't know, because there's I love a lot of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I really do, and I think even the stuff that most people like, the obvious one that most people dislike, Die Another Day. I don't know. I suppose the first thing that jumps to mind is probably some elements of Skyfall, and I've watched it more, and I do enjoy it more, and I do love the film. But I suppose for me, the direction that film took things is a step away from what I personally wanted. Like looking at Casino Royale, it was like that was such a breath of fresh air and an amazing, new territory and all that kind of stuff. I would say the things, like the Aston Martin machine guns and all that kind of stuff was just like, that didn't kind of sit well for me. So I suppose elements of Skyfall would be my answer to that question. Skyfall kind of universally celebrated everywhere, really. And that's my thoughts. How about you?
Well, a couple of things. I think you could almost flip the logic and say a lot of people aren't too fond of Octopussy, whereas I really like it. I've got like a real soft spot for it, and I think everyone has a favourite film. That it's nice if you've got one that's not always your talked about ones, your Goldfingers, your Casino Royale, Skyfall, whatever. And for me, I do like a bit of Octopussy. Now, in terms of the sort of negative, it's the same with talking down the Bond actors or anything like that. You never want to do it.
No.
I think for the sort of casual Bond fan, but also some of the serious Bond fans agree with this, Goldfinger is said to be the Bond film that stands, that's the one that all other Bond films are measured by, which I agree, and I think it is the most iconic Bond film, and I love it. But I think there are certain bits to it which slightly lower it compared to From Russia, Majesty's, Casino, Thunderball for me as well, and it's to some people I think it's seen as almost flawless. Whereas when I watch it, again, this is my personal opinion, I do pick things in that film. So although I love it, and I really do love Goldfinger, I think it's an amazing film, there are certain things in it, like you, certain elements which when I watch it stand out to me. And that's purely on an individual scale, because everyone has a different experience when they watch Bond, and everyone will have certain things which they love and certain things which, for whatever reason, just, doesn't sit well, like you said.
So let's have an example of one of those then.
Okay. Some of the sort of effects were a bit dodgy in terms of the back projection, but that I think is the test of time. The annoying thing for me is the editing of the bomb going down. If they had edited that properly, that would have been a lot better. Same with Majesty's, really. But the fact that Bond does tend to sit around a lot in that film, he's trapped a couple of times. He is a bit inept. I know we've said that before when we reviewed. And aside from a brilliant car chase and a brilliant fight in Fort Knox, there's not a lot else going on physically.
It is a funny one, that, isn't it? I mean, we talked about this at length in the review, but it is funny in the sense that Goldfinger is an amazing movie, and it's like so iconic, and there's all this amazing stuff. But Bond himself isn't that active in the movie. It's like every girl he comes into contact with ends up getting killed. He tries to escape, crashes the car, gets captured, and even doesn't defuse the bomb at the end. So it's kind of like he's almost passive in that movie for a lot of it, which is quite funny.
I do feel bad saying this, though. It is bad to say it because I do love the film. It's just it's just sometimes you have to be
exactly how you feel.
Honest.
You be honest, but at the same time you feel like you feel guilty for saying anything negative.
Yeah, I do.
But there we go. Good question. I suppose like you say, you could flip that on its head and see the ones that most people don't like that you do like and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'm interested to, like you said about Octopussy, I'm interested to watch that period of Bond again, because like I've always said, that's my weakest Bond kind of era for me. But there we go. Good question, Charlie. Now,
Cheers,
next
Charlie.
up, we heard from JBR listener Darren Noble, who sent in this somewhat adorable video of his little daughter, Holly. Now, he mentioned in the email that he wasn't allowed to call her Pussy. He wanted to name her after a Bongo. He wasn't allowed to call her Pussy, so he went with Holly Goodhead instead, obviously omitting the Goodhead for obvious reasons. But yeah, we've got a little video snippet here and some audio of Holly singing Goldfinger, funnily enough. So let's have a listen to that.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the
spider's touch.
a spider's
Touch.
better. Such a
Finger.
beckons you to enter his web of sin, but don't go in. Goldfinger. That's it.
He's the man.
The man with the
Spider's touch.
a spider's touch.
Touch.
Better.
And how cute was that?
Well, you just couldn't help but smile, could you? And like laugh and it's like I love the way she said "Midas touch." That
Yeah.
was just super cute, super
Adorable. Now, what I also like about this is I like to see that Daryl is indoctrinating her into the world of Bond from day one. It's like it's one of those things. It's like what happened with me. I had no choice but to be a Bond film fan because it was just in my life from day one. So I feel like Darren's doing the same thing, pumping the music in, getting the movies there. So she's just got no choice but to be a hardcore Bond fan. Good work, Darren.
So was Holly? Did she say how old was Holly? 2 or 3 or 4 or?
I don't think you mentioned her
mention-
name actually, but
No,
she's little Dink. She's little tiny one. So
Little bit. I think it'll be the case that when the baby was when she was still in the tummy, play the Bond soundtracks into the tummy and put the speakers up close. So get used to a bit of Shirley and a bit of Barry early on.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like when the time comes for me to produce offspring, I feel like I want to train it, could be a boy or a girl, from day one, and get the Bond skills moving. Get them on a pair of skis as soon as I possibly can. School them in the arts of lock picking and fast driving and shooting guns and stuff. It's going to be great. Going to turn my offspring into the ultimate super spy. It's going to be great. Excited about that.
I like it. Sounds good. Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff.
Great stuff. Well, that was a great video, Darren. Cheers for that.
Absolutely. So we've had another post of This Week in Bond from Linda Zhu. What's she been chatting about this week?
So Linda's one this week has been quite good. We've been talking, a couple of strange points really. There's been quite a few injuries amongst the Spectre crew members, and one of which was Terry Madden. Now he's working as second unit AD, assistant director, and he's been working on Bond since For Your Eyes Only. So he's been there pretty much since I was born, or just after a long time basically. But yeah, he's got injury. I think he's getting he's a bit better now. I wasn't sure of the full extent, but that was a bit sad to hear. She did a lovely piece on the ladies of Spectre as they bond over Bond. So Leah Seydoux and Monica Bellucci are having their chat about Bond. There's a little bit about Lazenby attended the Great British Film Reception in LA, and there's a nice. I think it might have even been the shag you were out of Spy Who Loved Me. I'm not sure, but there was a British. I don't know if it was actually.
It was. I don't know if it was, but it was. I think it was a Jag with the whole Union Jack kind of paint job, just like Austin Powers, which is nice. Yeah,
that's right. And then finally, she talked a bit about Brosnan, who had his thoughts for the next Bond.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's got lots of good stuff there.
So make sure you head on over to jamesbondradio.com and keep up with Linda's reporting, which is always good. She's always keeping us up to date with what's happening in the world of Bond. Plenty to read about. Make sure you leave us some comments because Linda's somewhat like us in the sense that we're quite attention seeking, aren't we, Chris? We like comments, we like reviews and things like that. And if we don't get attention, we get very upset, don't we? We get
we do.
We get
well,
very...
I tend to lock myself away in a room for about 3 days. Yeah. I don't even let myself have any food or water.
Yeah.
I get upset and I just play white noise at full volume for the whole time that I'm in there.
Well, that's
a bit like.
a bit like
Well, I was going to say I have scorpions coming in as well, like Bond in Die Another Day, but I didn't want to say that because people think I'm just copying him. But I can't help it.
Yeah,
so.
no worries. So yeah, you don't want to put Chris through that. You don't want to put me through that sort of agony, and you certainly don't want to put Linda through that agony. So give her plenty of comments and all that kind of stuff, because it shows we've got people reading those posts, and it's always good to get some feedback. So head on over to jamesbondradio.com, check out the This Week in Bond posts, and let us know your thoughts on there. What else have we got on the website, Chris?
So there's a couple of other little bits. We've just posted Matthew Grice's part 2 of his The Rough with the Smooth. So we released part 1, I think it was a few podcasts ago now. And it's all about the alternate world of Bond. So I think part 1 was kind of, was it up until From Russia with Love, a Goldfinger, something like that? And then part 2 is...
It was basically like an imagining of an I can't say that word imagining of an alternate universe Bond, based around the whole Kevin McClory thing of how things might have gone differently in those days. So it's well worth reading. Part 2's up on the blog now, so make sure you check that out. And we also had a great post by Jack Lugo. He's returned to the JBR blog with some Spectre speculation as well, and he's got a rather interesting theory about the possible way the Spectre storyline might go in the film. That's heating up the website. Actually, there's tons of comments and people debating that. So make sure you head over to the website and check that out too.
Excellent, good stuff. So what's it time for, Tom?
It's time for Bond trivia, Chris.
Bond trivia? Oh wow!
Indeed,
yes, I love Bond trivia.
Me too, don't we all? So I'm going to let you go first this time.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I must say apologies for last week or last podcast, because I was writing up a Bond trivia having read an old school version of The World Is Not Enough, where indeed the script was different to the film. So there was a miss sort of communication.
Well, yeah. So
of
basically,
what I was doing.
Basically, it makes me feel better because I didn't know the answer to the question. And then, as it turns out, the question was wrong anyway. So I was in the clear on that. So, that was good.
You were.
I was happy with that.
I apologise to everyone for that because that was pretty bad. But I'll make up for it this week, I promise.
Absolutely.
So I am going to do... I think I do treat you a bit unfairly when it comes to trivia. But I do like doing that. So I might continue with it today. So I've got 2 questions for you. One of I think one of them is really interesting, which I didn't know about until reasonably recently. The other one I think you'll know, and we'll start with that one. Okay. So Bond Trivia question 1. What are the real or full names of the following James Bond villains?
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Dr. No.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Big.
Oh, you bastard. Go on, carry on.
Yanis.
Okay.
Renard.
I know some of those, and I know I don't know some of the other ones, but I know they get mentioned. And that's going to annoy the shit out of me. Oh, there's more. All right, cool, coming in.
2 more. Gustav Graves.
Okay.
And finally, Raoul Silver. So just to go through those again, we've got Dr. No, Mr. Big, Yanis, Renard, Gustav Graves, and Raoul Silver. So what are the real or full names of those following James Bond villains?
Right. Okay? Good stuff. That's a good question.
No. Part 2 is one which really intrigued me. I think you'll either know it or you won't, and I really don't know if you will or not.
All right.
Question 2 is, what is the name of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's grandfather who appeared as a villain in a Bond film? What Bond film was it, and what was his role? You know the actor and wrestler The Rock.
Of course.
Basically, his granddad was a villain in a Bond film. What was the film, and what was his role? And if you know his name as well, then extra bonus points.
Dude, you are punishing me this week. You really are.
But this one, I mean, this is hard. It's not this is a hard one because I actually didn't know this until recently.
I read about it,
but it's interesting.
I read about The Rock's granddad very recently, and I remember reading what film he was in, and it's just escaped me. But all right, I'm gonna give it some thought, and obviously we'll reveal the answers to that at the end of the episode. My Bond trivia question of the day is much more simple than yours, I will add.
Sorry, my apologies.
which was the last Bond film to announce the title of the next film in the series during the closing credits? Which was the last Bond film to announce the title of the next film in the series during the closing credits?
I think you got me.
Ooh.
I think you got me on that.
Good. It makes me feel a little bit better about what I've had to deal with this week.
Sorry. Cool. So I think we should get on with the meat and the beef and the chicken and the duck and the steak
the meat
of
and
the
the beef
interview.
and the chicken and the duck. The meat and potatoes, I think, was the one you were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's time to talk about the Bond villains.
So we're not talking about henchmen. We've done the henchmen. We're not talking about some of the femme fatales or anything like that. This is purely the main villains in each of the films. Now, the majority have one. There are one or two Bond films where there are two villains which we need to sort of go through. But yeah, I mean, this is one of, Bond. People go to Bond films to see certain things, to see good locations, sort of maybe chases, nice, good action, Bond girls, gadgets, pre-title sequence. But one of the main things people go to see is a Bond villain. And a lot of times it's said that a film, or particularly a Bond film, is judged upon the strength of its villain. And basically, it's hugely important to get a villain right. And I think with Skyfall, I know you mentioned there were certain elements you weren't sure of. I think with Skyfall, I really liked Raul Silva. I thought the villain was great in that. And you've got the classic ones, which everyone in the world has heard of and knows about. And it's just a subject which you've got to love as a Bond fan, because that is such a big part of it, isn't it?
That's it. I think a lot of actors say if they can't play James Bond, they want to play the villain, don't they? So it is what it is. And I think getting a villain right is very, very difficult, in the sense that you can easily go over the top. You can not go far enough, and they just appear kind of bland and sort of a bit forgettable. And getting that just right is really difficult. And like you say, I think with Silver, they did a great job of making him really kind of Fleming-esque and sort of flamboyant villain, but still making him applicable to the modern day, and it really works. But we'll talk about Silver a bit later on, because we're going to start right back at the beginning and crack on with some Dr. No. So the very first, the original Bond villain, Chris. What are your thoughts on Dr. No?
I mean, very similar to the actual film, in that I think he is hugely underrated as a Bond villain. I think there's so much. If you haven't seen Dr. No for a while, if you go back and watch it, there's so much Joseph Wiseman was the actor who played him. And there's so much that he puts into that character, which is a staple of Bond villains of the future. He just brings a menace to the role, an intelligence, like, he's ruthless, and there are very, I mean, a lot of people say Goldfinger sort of set the standard for Bond villains, kind of like the film. Goldfinger, amazing villain, but do not overlook Dr. No, because Dr. No is a brilliant villain. I think he was fantastic. What about you, Tom?
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. I think he's one of those that, like, he has the look, doesn't he? Like, he's got the Nehru jacket on. He's got the disfigurement with the metal hands. He's very, he invites Bond to dinner and does that whole thing and reveals his plans. He's a little bit sort of strange and perverted. There's always that little scene where he comes and peeks under Bond's bed covers and has a little look at him, and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like he is like the template for the Bond villain, isn't he? Really, he really is,
definitely.
Yeah,
without a doubt, no. And I mean, another thing about him is that his character didn't appear until 2/3 of the way into the film. So you mentioned other characters saying his name. You know that other characters are working for him, but through the fact that some of them commit suicide rather than sort of going against Dr. No, you know that this guy is super powerful, and people will die for him. So you've already built in the character before you see him.
Well, that's it. That's the beautiful thing. Like I always say, I've said this about a million times so far, is like whenever they introduce the new Bond actor, I love it when you don't see his face for a little while, like they did in Dr. No. And it kind of builds up the tension there. And I think they did that great by not introducing Dr. No until a long time into the film. You just hear about him, and that builds up the tension and the pressure about him until he's finally revealed. And I think he's great. He's one of my favorite villains for sure. And he said the iconic $1 million.
I mean, again, a lot of people who might be a casual Bond fan or not, not watch it as much as we do. They've obviously heard that $1 million thing. They probably wouldn't have known where it came from. But yeah, exactly. It was Dr. No. And I like, so the interesting thing is when we first see him, it is that scene where he was walking in, Bond's asleep. I know you had the idea that maybe he was having a quick perv to see him, which was an interesting take on it. Maybe that was it. But that's when you first see his metal hands. So you're like straight away like, whoa, what's going on here? And then obviously when he comes in, first thing you hear is a $1 million, and then you see him, like you said, Nehru jacket, hair slicked back, and he walks very sort of efficiently. He doesn't move a lot, and it almost gives a feeling like kind of robotic, perhaps robotic, or just not slightly inhuman, I would say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like the fact that he doesn't move, it makes him a lot creepier, because it's like everything's going on inside that brain of his. You don't quite know what he's thinking and what he's plotting and planning and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good point. But at the same time, he's deadly because he crushes the statue at the table and all that kind of stuff.
That's
so
great.
He's got the power and the skills, but he's kind of creepy with it. It's good observation.
That's the kind of precursor to Odd Job with the golf ball and Godbinder with the dice. It was back again. Dr. No started it off, the crushing the thing with his metal hand, which was good. And he's super clever as well when when they're having dinner with Bond. He notices Bond take the knife away, and basically he's on top of Bond at all times.
Well, that's it. Like when we first meet him, he says, $1 million, Mr. Bond, you're wondering what it cost. And what does Bond say? As a matter of fact, I was. So he's always one step ahead of Bond. It's great that he's a deadly and powerful adversary, Dr. No.
He is indeed, definitely. So what do you think about his actual plot then, the sort of scheme that he was doing?
So it's the typical Bond villain thing, isn't it? It's like toppling rockets to play two countries off against each other and spark a war. That is like Spectre's number one hobby, isn't it? That
it is really.
So, you'd have thought they'd have cracked onto that by now, but that's what they like doing. So yeah, I mean that's what Blofeld tries to do in You Only Live Twice. It's a similar thing, and it happens again and again. So again, this is setting the template of the evil scheme. So bring it on. Yeah, it obviously is a good scheme because they all try it at some point, don't they?
Yeah. They definitely, and obviously this one I guess is slightly simplified in terms of it's kind of like Spectre testing the waters, isn't it? Almost before they go full scale. You Only Live Twice later on, and he obviously works for Spectre, so we know that. So this is the first time we hear of Spectre, the organisation. He's obviously quite high up in the ranks. And Spectre are pissed off that he dies because him from Russia, obviously, that you can tell they're not too happy. So he was definitely one of the key players. The scheme was good, toppling missiles, creating a bit of havoc. And I like the way that straight away Bond thinks in his slightly, is it racist? Perhaps racist. Sort of says, you must be, working for the East, whatever. And then he says that brilliant line, East, West, points at the compass, each as stupid as the other. And again, that shows you that, Spectre is its own organisation. It has its own goals and motives, and Dr. No is a huge part of that. So, fantastic.
Absolutely.
Liked it a lot.
Good stuff. Now, in terms of kind of like how we see Dr. No meet his end and how like his plan gets foiled, what I do enjoy is that essentially the plot was foiled by that big wheel, the big danger wheel. Just don't have the wheel and then you'll be all right. Do you know what I mean?
Or if you have the wheel, don't put danger level.
Yeah.
And then,
or at least have some sort of safety mechanism so you can't wind up that high. But so it all came down to the danger wheel. Which is
pretty much it, isn't it?
But,
I like that.
But in terms of how he actually meets his end, what I like about this is Dr. No's hands-on. because obviously
Yeah.
you've got Bond, he's suited
Oh,
up,
I
he's in
like that.
disguise. And instead of just sending, one of his henchmen to go and sort Bond out, he gets stuck in himself, and they have, the
Yeah.
fight on the slow dipping mechanism.
Yeah.
And his hands become the petard by which he is hoist. So
Indeed.
yeah, it's I feel like that's a memorable kind of death. It's a good way
Yeah.
for him to go. And
Definitely.
he's good in the sense that he's got the psychological power, but he's also got the
Yeah.
physical side
Yeah.
of things as well.
That's it. I know it wasn't a super long fight, but it was good to see him actually get at Bond, because normally, or in a lot of other films, it's the henchman that does it, and Bond and the main villain very rarely have sort of
Fisticuffs.
fisticuffs. Exactly. Obviously, people like Emilio Largo, they do. Blofeld from Majesties, he does, but there's quite a few that will sit around, a bit like Stromberg, a bit like a few others, and and there's not a physical thing going on. So it's nice to see that with Dr. No. Yeah. So I agree with you. Demise is brilliant. His strength is his weakness, and that's what happens. Fits really well within the film. And and obviously Krabkey then explodes thanks to Bond, and the sort of scheme is foiled. So
Yeah.
I think as the very first James Bond villain, Dr. No is superb. I really think he's a great first villain.
Absolutely iconic, right up there with the best of them. Definitely good old Dr. No.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good stuff.
so moving on to From Russia with Love then. Now, this one's a bit of a tricky one. Obviously, with the Henchman episode that we did, we've already talked about Red Grant, so we're not classing Red Grant as a villain. We're classing him as a henchman. But then you could say, Blofeld is obviously the main villain, the genius mastermind.
Yeah.
But really, what we're going to do is we're going to call Rosa Klebb the main villain in this one.
Yeah.
Even though she's a henchman of sorts, because Blofeld's the villain.
We can talk a bit about Blofeld as well. We can talk a little bit about Blofeld
We
as
can
well.
do that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, why
but
not?
we'll tie ourselves up in knots, kind of trying to classify everybody. So, so in terms of From Russia with Love, I think let's start with Rosa.
Yeah.
And I think again, like I describe Rosa Klebb as like a nasty, horrible little bulldog wasp of a woman. Do you know what I mean? Just a really nasty, horrible creature. And you cannot argue with the spiky shoe, Chris.
You can't, because if you do, you won't be around much longer, will you?
That is true.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great villainess. I think she's one of the great villains of the series. Definitely, she is like that scary teacher that you just don't want to be in detention with, isn't she, or anything like that. But I think she's got it's interesting how when you first see her. I think it's when now. Do you first see her when she arrives on Spectre Island, or do you see her before when Tanya goes to meet her at the...
The first time you see her is during the pre-title sequence when the lights come on after he's been strangled, and she's got the watch, I think, and she says the time that...
Is she there then?
I think she is.
No,
maybe I'm wrong.
I think that's more Zenny then. I think she comes to Spectre Island later when she assigns Red Grant to her sort of scheme, doesn't she? When she knuckle dusts him.
Yeah.
So I think it might be the first time you see her is either there or when Tanya goes to the consulate and knocks on the door, and then she opens it, and then she has that sort of chat with her, and there's that slight lesbian bit where she puts her hand on her knee, and she's got the cane and wraps it against her. Straight away, you know she's a nasty piece of work, and then obviously with Red Grant and the knuckle dusters in the stomach, and she don't take no shit, this woman. She is pure business, and that she's going to get stuff done, isn't she?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, like in the book, there's that line during that scene. Where Tanya goes to meet her and all that kind of stuff, and she kind of tells her mission, so to speak. She comes out dressed in like nasty negligee and like horrible old makeup on and all that kind of stuff. And there's a line in there where Fleming says like she looked like the ugliest, nastiest whore in the world or something like that. And like obviously they didn't go that far in the movie because it was only 1963, but like they just hinted at it with the touch on the leg and all that kind of stuff. But like you describing her as that horrible school teacher is like the perfect description, because I had one like that at school. Her name was Baggy Matthews. Nobody liked her, and she was one of those like real hardcore, like bossy kind of old school teachers, and she's cut from that cloth, definitely. And the way you see her through the movie, that whole the knuckle duster thing, the way she just kind of like that commanding presence she's got. She's only little, but I wouldn't mess with her.
No, certainly not. Especially not when she wears those glasses. They'd freak me right out.
Yeah, completely.
No, and I guess in terms of her appearance, she's always in, as you'd expect, sort of quite drab colours and everything like that. But like you mentioned, she has got those shoes, and she is deadly. Obviously, we'll get to that at the end. But in terms of sort of her role within the scheme of the plot, so basically, Blofeld has said to her, "Okay, we need to get MI6 back for killing Dr. No. We need to set them. We've got this trap. We've got a Lecter decoder machine. We'll make them think they can get this. We'll if you find like the smart Russian cipher clerk, and we'll pretend that she falls in love and so on." And so Kleb's mission is obviously to find the assassin. So she's the one that sort of gets Grant. She's the one that obviously gets Tanya. And so she's the one that sort of sets things in motion. And the only time that you ever see her sort of scared is when she's back on Spectre boat with Kronstein next to her, and then Morzeni comes into the background, and she knows one of them is going to be gone pretty soon, and she's basically crapping herself, isn't she?
It's Blofeld's other hobby, where he gives you the impression he's going to kill one person, and then he turns on the other person at the last second. He loves doing that.
He does love doing that.
That is, you're right. That's the only time she shows any kind of weakness. The rest of it, she's kind of, I mean, even at the end when Bond fights her in the hotel room and stuff, she's like, he has to literally get a chair and press her against the wall. To stop her getting at him, because she's such an horrible little nasty piece of work. Yeah, I would want to fight her, absolutely.
No, but I mean, when you see her sort of kick, she sounds a bit nasty as well when she's trying to kick him and kill him and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think that was basically her last resort, because by that point, the plan had been foiled. So the whole thing with Grant, obviously that didn't work out. Bond eventually got that upper hand against Grant. Kronstein was obviously killed because of his because his plan didn't go through. Morzeni with a boat, that whole thing had blown up. So she was literally, this was her last chance basically, and she thought, well, I know if you can't, if no one can do it for you, you do it for yourself, and you make sure that job gets done properly. So she was going to basically kill Bond, take the Lecter, job done, back in Spectre's good books, back in Blofeld's good books. But obviously, she wasn't killed by Bond, was she? So no. It was interesting this way.
This is another, what eventually became a Bond staple, which is where Bond's in combat with the villain, and then the Bond girl or a bystander ends up shooting the villain or killing him. So we see the same with Domino. We see the same in Skyfall and all that kind of stuff, though it was a different way around. It was Bond helping him. So there's that kind of mechanism, and this is the first time that happened. So, and obviously it's worth mentioning in the book, she did get him with the poison shoe and Bond passes out. That's right. The end of the book, is him passing out to unconsciousness. So it's an interesting way to go. And again, you've got to give it to her. She is super memorable. If you watch Kingsman, the spiky shoe is like a key part of that. It's one of those iconic things, isn't it? Everyone remembers her.
Yeah, because she's so frightening, I think, is one of the things. But it was good that obviously Tanya was choosing between her and Bond, and obviously she shot Claire because she was in love with Bond. But I think she also knew that there was more to Claire than meets the eye. She wasn't just a head of operations for Smersh or whatever. I think that was good. So what about Blofeld in this film? So this is the first time that we see Blofeld. Obviously, we don't see him fully. We don't see his face. We see him sitting on a chair. He's got his own boat. He's got a nice big boat. He likes white Turkish Angora cats, so we know that. He likes Siamese fighting fish, so we know that. We know he's got a lot of power. We know, like you said, he likes to kill off his employees that don't sort of do too well. And we know that he's going to be around for future Bond films. So what was your sort of impression now?
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because, we've had the first Bond film, we've had Dr. No, and we've had this mention of this organisation called Spectre, and then we obviously have the death of Dr. No. Then in this movie, From Russia with Love, we get to see the hint of the man behind the whole thing, the whole Spectre thing. We just see the pussycat, we never see his face, we just hear his voice, and we see what happens to people who fail him. So they're really building this up now. And the great thing about it is, and they don't do it enough in this day and age because it's all about instant gratification these days. I love how slowly it took to build that stuff up, man. Because look, you're on film 2, 1963, you don't see his face. They don't even mention him in Goldfinger. Then in Thunderball, 1965, again, same sort of thing. You don't see his face, you see how powerful he is. And then you don't see him until 4 years later. They've been building up this character and they finally reveal him. So I love that slow burn. I feel like they should do that more in movies these days because it's just so much more valuable than just the quick and easy route.
Yeah, I think so. Well, maybe Spectre and Bond 25 could be doing that. Who knows?
Maybe.
I mean,
you never know.
Let's hope so. That would be good. So yeah, anything else to sort of say about From Russia? I guess the plot was an interesting one involving sort of.
It's just a revenge mission, wasn't it? Really, I suppose it's unique in that sense.
Yeah, and humiliation. They wanted to humiliate. Blofeld wanted to humiliate MI6 by having the whole Russians, caught in love with each other and all that. So yeah, it's an interesting take. So it's,
I like the fact that it's a low key thing in the sense that it's not trying to spark World War III. It's just let's kind of slander the British Secret Service and kind of just make them look like fools basically. And it's a great one.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing as well about Bond films is that you've got so many different aspects, and I like the big bombastic fantastic ones, but I also like the ones like this, and that's why they're so good, is because you do have this sort of differentiate between the films and the plots, and it was a good one.
Absolutely.
So on to number 3, on to film 3, but now this guy, he's pretty good, isn't he?
Mr. Goldfinger, absolutely. Now this dude, he's another one, iconic. He's like we've said before, haven't he? If you did a poster of Bond villains, like with all the iconic Bond villains, like so far, everyone we've talked about so far would be on that poster, Goldfinger included. And it's great. And I love the fact that he's just got this real obvious weakness, which is just utter greed. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's such a powerful thing. It's like you just know what motivates him, and that's what it's all about. Even down to the fact that he's got gold colours on him at all times. Like he's always wearing something gold. If he's not wearing something gold, he's got a gold revolver. And he's a ginger, so it's like there it is. It's all rolled into one. I mean, the dude was born for it,
Yeah, and obviously he's a beast as well. It shows his greed in terms of food. Yeah. But it's just the thing that I love about Goldfinger, and I do. Obviously his name as well, Auric, AU is a symbol for gold, so that's quite interesting. But it's just gold. Gold is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because a bit like diamonds as well, everyone in the world grows up knowing how precious it is and how fantastic it is, and very rarely do people have gold, or at least lots of it. It's one of those it's just not going to happen type thing. And so just to have this guy who's like super wealthy, but to him notes and money don't mean anything. It's purely he's basically got gold fever beyond the extreme. That is all he thinks about. Yeah. And obviously when he kills Jill Masterson, sprays with gold, and that's it's almost like it's like a replacement for sex as well. You could look at it that way in terms of, you never really see him with a lady, so to speak. So gold is a bit like Vargas. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't make love, but killing is basically Vargas's thing. Yeah. Goldfinger is obviously gold, and that is purely what's on his mind. He'll dream about gold. He'll wake up in the morning, the first thing he thinks about is gold. He'll go to bed thinking of gold, and that is his obsession. And to see someone so obsessed about one thing, it's great to watch, because you're like, wow, you're a bit of a nutter, but I love it.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is, like, with all of Fleming's villains, they've always got something like off about them, like going back into the 50s and all that kind of stuff, with how people were looked at those times. They've always got some sort of deformity or something that's wrong with them. Do you know what I mean? And something like greed is just such an ugly thing that you don't need any kind of physical characteristics other than that. It's just such a lovely thing. And I love how, like, the first time you see him, there he is. He's obviously a very wealthy man, but he's cheating at cards. like just so he can get more. Like it's all about the wealth and the gain. He's cheating at cards. You've got there's the golf scene with the gold bar, and as soon as he drops it, he can't focus because there's this big chunk of gold there. I love that. I love the fact that that is his whole thing, his whole weakness. Just it's a great character. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's great, and it's I guess he's the first one as well to sort of bring in the whole loyal henchman thing. So he needs someone who's so loyal they'll do anything for him, and obviously Odd Jobs. They are probably the best pairing, the best villain henchman pairing in the series by far. I think Goldfinger and Odd Job, most memorable, best pairing easily. Yeah. But like you said, I love the way that he dresses. It's always light browns or yellows or sort of obviously gold and stuff like that. His car as well is sort of yellow, isn't it? And obviously gold plated when he's stealing it, which is good. So yeah, I think if you ever think of someone who's greedy, if someone just says, "Oh yeah, he's greedy," you kind of do picture Goldfinger a bit, don't you? Yeah, I guess so. It's kind of strange. But I think what I love about Goldfinger, the film and the person, is his scheme, is his plot. So this is a guy that's probably one of the biggest sort of gold hoarders, as it were, in the world. In the novel, he was going to break into Fort Knox to steal the gold. Obviously, logically, that's not going to happen. So, the way that he does it is he thinks of getting an atomic bomb, explode it in Fort Knox, irradiate that entire gold supply of the US. His stock soars, and the people he was obviously working with Red China. They helped supply the bomb to the dirty device, as it were. So they were happy, and obviously his gold goes like super high in value and stuff. And that I think is a great plot and a great twist on the original idea as well.
Well, that's it. It's like in the original book, all he wanted to do was steal the gold, and in this one, it's like putting an ingenious twist on that whole thing and just essentially destroying that gold for a period of time, so his belly goes through the roof. So it's like doing a robbery by just increasing the value of what you already have without actually stealing anything, which is such a genius idea when you think about it. Yeah. I mean, it's such a genius thing. What amuses me is how when he's having his mint julep with Bond, and Bond goes, well, he's exploding an atomic bomb in Fort Knox. That would make the gold radioactive for 57 years. How does he work that out? That's my question. How does he know it would be 57 years?
58 to be exact.
There you go. He was wrong.
Yeah. How does Bond know? I assume Goldfinger would have done the research on it.
I guess
I suppose because things are radiated. They do have a lifetime, don't they? Like atomic life. I think of radiation. I'm not sure how it all works.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'm not really a sort of expert in physics and radiation. So
are you not?
No, I'm not. I'm not off the top of my head. So I don't really know. But yeah. But hey, maybe I'm wrong and Bond's right. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, no, Bond was wrong as well. Goldfinger was right, wasn't he?
That's true.
But that exact scene, I was about to say something about that exact scene, is that you said, and I totally agree, that scheme is genius, and it is genius. It's brilliant. Not only do we get to see Fort Knox, and again, this is something that no one in the world, aside from maybe a handful of people, will ever see. But suddenly we're into Fort Knox. We're seeing this cathedral of gold, even though obviously it doesn't look like that in real life. But this is what we're seeing, and we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Not only that, but the scheme is genius, but Goldfinger knows it. So when he is telling Bond when they're having the mint julep, you can just see how much fun he's having. He's like, I'm a brilliant genius, and now you know. But he's loving it. And obviously a big part of that scheme as well was Pussy Galore's Flying Circus with the Delta 9 nerve gas. But Goldfinger was completely ruthless as well, because obviously that Delta 9 killed all of the gangsters, and he was willing to kill 40,000 US troops.
Yeah,
that's mass murder. That's
indeed.
not, and that's purely just for, and obviously the atomic bomb as well. I'm assuming that would have a bit of a dodgy effect on the surrounding area as well.
It's going to have some repercussions for the locals, isn't it? That one, yeah.
I think it might do, yeah. So he was willing to go to massive lengths purely on greed. which is interesting, which is cool. I like
absolutely. So, like we discussed previously in this episode, the plot is prevented by the bomb being defused, not by Bond. It's just, as a little tussle with Oddjob, which is a great little fight, and then the bomb gets defused, and that's that. Now, how do you feel about Goldfinger's death?
Well, just very briefly going before that, obviously the bomb diffused is what stops the thing, but Bond has influenced it because he obviously appealed to Pussy Gallore's maternal instincts, which then changed the Delta 9 nerve gas to sort of a non-lethal, whatever gas was used. Yeah. Obviously, if that hadn't happened, if Bond hadn't stepped in, all those army people would have died, and obviously Goldfinger would have gotten away with it. So Bond, although it's not directly doing the bomb, he obviously assisted in its demise, and he obviously helped get the army lot in and stuff like that as well, didn't he? So
essentially, he moistened Pussy Galore sufficiently that she would save the day. Essentially, yeah. Good. There you go.
Exactly. But yeah, okay. On to Goldfinger's demise. Now, this is a funny one because I think it is. There's that whole MythBuster thing, isn't it? That we talked about the other podcast, where every man and woman and child sort of grow up thinking, whether it's from Goldfinger or from a million other films, if a window gets shot in a plane, everything's going to fly out of it, and that's kind of what you grow up thinking, isn't it? Because that's kind of what you see. As to how much that's true or not, I don't know. I think there was a MythBuster thing where it was proved not to be true, but I think maybe some things might have flown out. I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
Did you see that episode?
I did. There was an episode of Mythbusters where basically they tested loads of the Bond things. One of them, which was really interesting, is like, just to jump off topic a little bit, is the scene in Casino Royale at the very beginning where he's in the embassy and he's got Malacca around the neck and all the soldiers are aiming their guns at him, and he shoots the gas tank and it blows up the whole building. Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, if you were to shoot a gas cylinder, it would just make a hole in it and the gas comes out, which is another thing that I always grew up believing, that if you shot that, it would explode. And the other thing they did, obviously, was the Goldfinger kind of death scene. And basically the consensus was that if you were on a plane and you shot the window and there was a bullet hole, it would essentially depressurize the cabin, obviously, but not enough speed to suck anything out. However, if the hole was big enough, it would suck somebody out. So if it was like a humongous hole on the side, like the whole side of the fuselage was ripped out, then you'd get sucked out with because the depressuring would be so fast. Yeah. So so there's that. Yeah.
There we go. I think that's the thing, because you see the size of the window is your standard airplane window, and the size of Goldfinger is about 50 times the size of that window. But it makes for a memorable demise, doesn't it? It does make for you do remember it. It is a good one. I do like that little twist as well, where normally it's he beats the villain and then there's a henchman to deal with at the end. Yeah. Obviously, this is a reverse of that. He beats the henchman and then Goldfinger he's still got to deal with at the end. So that's kind of a nice difference to some of them as well.
It's funny though, in the sense that a lot of these villains, like Dr. No, for example, they are killed by the very thing that kind of motivates them sometimes. So it's interesting to see that doesn't happen with Goldfinger. It's not like he dies in a big pile of gold or something like that.
A smelting pot of gold or something. Because that's something that you'd automatically think of, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
Like that. Maybe he dies by like liquid gold going down his mouth, something like that, and then burning his insides. That's purely like feeding his greed.
That was dark.
Yeah, I know. Well, it is a bit.
Good.
But,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Oh, well.
So
Goldfinger 2.
There it is. So that is Goldfinger. So, in generally speaking, are you a fan of Mr. Goldfinger?
For me, he's probably. I mean, I know Blofeld's in a lot of films and in various guises, and I love Dr. No, and I love quite a few of the others. If someone had to say to me who is my favourite villain, I know what I mentioned about Goldfinger the film a little while ago, but I would probably say Goldfinger is my favourite villain. And I think it's because of the greed and his obsessiveness. is what I love about him so much.
It's good in the sense that he's not just trying to take over the world. You know, he's not doing the typical Bond villain things. He's just self-serving. He just wants a load of money, and that's it. So good on you, Goldfinger, you greedy bastard. Next up, now this will be an interesting one. We've got Emilio Largo from Thunderball. Now, I would say Emilio is a bit of a sort of forgotten Bond villain. Not forgotten, but he's sort of, by the casual Bond fan, he's probably not remembered that well.
I think he's lived on through eye patches and number 2.
Exactly.
But a little else. Yeah, no, I completely agree. If you look at him compared to the previous 3 or 4 we've just talked about, I'm not saying he's a step down in terms of his quality of being a villain, but for whatever reason, he's just not been quite as in the sort of folklore of Bond villainy. Whether that's because he's not as memorable or what, I'm not quite sure. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It is a funny one because he's kind of. I guess what it is, and I think we might have mentioned this in the Thunderball podcast, is that he doesn't really have like his key kind of memorable scene. Do you know what I mean? There's not like one line like Goldfinger has, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." Dr. No has $1 million. Rosa Clipp's got a shoe. He doesn't really have that thing that kind of gets you and kind of makes him super memorable, you know? There was that thing, again, I think we talked about it, where he talks to Domino on the boat and he says about applying extreme cold to extreme heat to torture somebody. I think we said that, didn't we? If we'd have seen that happen, where he tortured Domino or something, maybe that would have been the thing just to kind of raise him up a level. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree actually. But I think he is a great villain. I think the chemistry between Largo and Bond in Thunderball is brilliant. They have so many cool scenes. Like now we're getting back to the whole sort of dining Bond. You know, they're kind of, you know, making sure he's all luxurious. You know, giving him fine food and whatever. And Largo's brilliant at that. And I love the byplay between Bond and Largo when they each know what the other's up to. Obviously, we talked about it before at the casino scene, the spectre on the shoulder, spectre of defeat. Yeah. And when Bond goes to Palmyra, you know, they're shooting the clay pigeon, and at all times they know exactly who each other are. Yeah. But there's just it's handled so well. I mean, the dialogue in Thunderball is brilliant, but there's nothing that I don't like about Largo. I do think he's good. He's ruthless. Again, he's another one who will happily kill off any of his employees that he's not too bothered by. He's intelligent. He's strong. He sort of goes out in the field. He leads. He's the first one to actually lead an attack, as it were, as a main villain. He's obviously a bit perverted, like we mentioned, in terms of the ice and the cigar, and he is mean, and he's and you know he wouldn't hesitate to kill someone.
That's it. I think like you say, the interplay between him and Bond. I love the bit where they're clay pigeon shooting, and Bond's like, "Seems terribly difficult," and then shoots from the hip. He's like, "No, it isn't, is it?" And he just goes, "No."
That's really good. Oh, that should have been a quote. That "no" was so good. Oh, that was brilliant.
No. But yeah, I love all that. I just feel like he needed that scene or just that one line. Do you know what I mean? Because he's pretty sort of unique looking. He's got the eye patch and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And like you say, he is deadly and he's physically capable as well. I suppose the closest he comes is the scene where he chops the air in the Vulcan under the water, chops the kind of the guy's air supply off and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I just feel like he was missing that one little key thing or line to kind of really elevate him.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think of his appearance then? The sort of snow white hair, the eye patch. So the eye patch then, do you think he obviously has lost use of one eye? Maybe Blofeld, he didn't do something good and Blofeld stuck a fork in it and then pulled it out. Or
maybe. Who knows? Yeah, no. But I imagine it was something pretty nasty that we never found out what happened to the eyeball. Yeah. I think he exudes that sort of wealthy Bond villain vibe. Yeah. You know, he's got like a unique look about him. I just sort of wanted to see him do a little bit more, I guess, is my thing.
Yeah. No, I think so. What about the whole scheme and the whole plot? But it's quite a simple plot in a way. It's still two Vulcan planes with atomic missiles hold basically the world to ransom.
Yeah.
And there we go. You know, the whole extortion and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the old school thing, isn't it? It's just holding people to ransom, blow up some bombs somewhere, and all that kind of stuff. Still happens to this day, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess it's worth a mention that obviously we see Blofeld again in this one. We've got the iconic Spectre boardroom meeting thing, which is great.
Yeah.
I love that part where the guy's getting electrified. And he just happens to just glance up and like doesn't even really give a shit. Like it's just like every other day to him, which is great. I love that.
That's brilliant. I love that bit. That's fantastic.
But yeah, I guess like his scheme isn't as inventive as Goldfinger's. But again, it's kind of your typical everyday Spectre plot, I guess.
But then you've got the whole thing where he, they had to get. They obviously employed Count Lippy and Fiona. They had to find this guy Angelo who to make him basically plastic surgery to voice lessons to make him look like this other guy, and then kill the other guy so he could replace him and stuff like that. So there was quite a bit going on in the background to be able to get to the whole hijacking thing. Which is good. But I do like the fact that obviously once a plane's hijacked, he is the one that leads out to go and get the bombs to bring them back. And there's that great bit sort of later on in the film where Bond's kind of infiltrated the sort of Spectre frogmen, and they go back to they're underwater sort of getting the missiles. And Largo looks across and kind of just notices him, and then basically Bond's screwed from that point on and has to sort of leg it away. And there's another nice bit where Bond's trying to inspect the hull of the Disco Volante underwater at night, and Largo sort of sees it on the underwater camera and it's like hand grenades, and like you can tell he's kind of a bit pissed off with Bond by this point, and that's quite nice as well. Feel like go away. So no, overall I agree. I think he's a great villain. I think he looks good. The scheme is classic. But I do agree. I think there's just maybe that one sort of scene or that one line or something which needs that little bit of
needs that little push. I feel that's all it needed. I feel maybe the key would have been that torture scene. Maybe Goldfinger's the equivalent of Goldfinger's laser table is what he needed.
Exactly.
But there we go. So now, in terms of kind of like his plot being foiled and his eventual demise and stuff, I guess it all comes down to Bond finding the bombs and calling in the cavalry and the big battle and all that kind of stuff. So how do you feel about the way that Largo is dispatched at the end?
Well, I mean, the battle beforehand is pretty epic. I know Thunderball really divides people. It seems to be like you either love it or you don't love it in terms of it's a bit long. The underwater scenes often get referenced and stuff like that. Yeah. Personally, I love it. I think it's brilliant. But, some people aren't too fond of it. But Largo in those scenes is brilliant because, he's kind of, you can tell he's like Bond. He's above everyone else. He can do his own thing. He'll go around and like take out some of the US Marines or whatever they are, paratroopers or whatever they are. So he's really good. And then obviously Bond, then the hydrofoil is brilliant as well. I mean, that's a great little, the Disco Volante, he's got a brilliant boat. So that's nice that he's got a toy to play with. And then obviously Bond climbs on the hydrofoil, and the fight is really hardcore. It's a proper beat down sort of fight, and Bond and him have a good little tussle. If the whole speeded up thing wasn't happening, it would be a bit better. But yeah, the demise. So this is another one where Bond gets saved by the girl. So similar to Tanya in From Russia with Love. Here we've got Domino with a spear gun who takes out Largo just as he's about to kill Bond, and Bond does look pretty scared when Largo's got the gun on him, but there we go. Again he's saved by the dame, as it were. So
there you go, the typical Bond thing of like Bond's got a gun to his face, he's about to get shot, somebody else steps in and and takes them out. So there it is. That's the kind of the.
I did like the way that Domino obviously shot him with a spear gun, and because Largo was the person responsible for killing her brother, so in its way, it's her revenge, which is pretty nice. So that was good. But after he'd been shot, it was kind of like a bit strange where he'd been shot, dropped the gun, then kind of stood up, or first of all he looked at Bond, then he sort of stood up, then he walked over, and then he basically collapsed on the steering wheel of the Disco Volante, which was obviously to maybe try and get them to crash. I don't know, but it did seem like quite an extended thing. But I guess it wouldn't happen straight away, would it? You would have a few sort of seconds, or perhaps even longer if you had been shot. I guess it depends on where it's penetrated.
Well, let's turn that over to the listeners. Listeners, if you've ever shot anybody with a harpoon, how long did it take that person to die?
Or been shot by one,
or
and
been shot,
managed to survive.
There you go. Good stuff. So there's Mr. Largo, number 2 himself, and that's that. So a good, solid Bond villain. We love him, but I just feel like he needed that little extra push to get him into super classic territory. Yeah. Which brings us on to super classic territory with. Indeed. Did you like my link there? That was a good one, wasn't it?
Amazing.
With Ernst Stavro Blofeld, some would say the most iconic portrayal of Ernst Stavro in You Only Live Twice. So, like I said before, we've been building to this moment for literally years. 1962 to 1967, 5 years of build-up. We've heard about Spectre in Dr. No, and it's been gradually building up to this reveal. So, how do you feel about Ernst?
Well, I completely agree in terms of this particular portrayal of Blofeld being the most iconic. I definitely agree with that. Again, brilliant. We didn't get to see him for ages, did we? In this film, it's the same thing. We see a sort of leg, I think, maybe an arm before the reveal. Obviously, we hear his voice when he's talking. I think the first time we see him is only when Bond gets into the volcano, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So we don't actually see his face until sort of, I think he moves hands aside, and then you get to see the scar, the great scar that runs down his eye. It's half closed, really deep into his cheek. Obviously, he's bald. He's little, so he's not. The Blofeld in the book was like 6'3" and built like a brick house.
He's almost a completely different description. Is in the book. Yeah. So
this guy's like not feeble in terms of he's sort of thin, isn't he? Small, particularly when he's sitting in this oversized chair, which isn't quite Austin Powers proportions, but the idea is there. Obviously, we've got the cat, but the look is great. I love that reveal. I think straight away you're like, whoa, this is the guy. And I love, imagine if they had gone for Jean Warwick, who is that sort of Father Christmas character, or even if they'd gone for someone like Charles Grey first, as opposed to Donald Pleasant. I mean, it's such an iconic look now, isn't it? And it was all down to that first portrayal of Blofeld. Yeah. If they'd brought in someone else, it could have been completely different, and it's such a big thing. I think they just hit the nail on the head with that.
You know what's funny? Like, that scar is such an iconic thing. I wonder why they ended up dropping that for, when Telly Savalas took over. He still had a similar look, obviously a very different build and stuff like that. But how hard would it have been just to add that scar in, and add some continuity there? I don't know why they didn't go with that.
No. They had the bald head, but the scar would have been nice. I guess his thing was the lack of earlobes, wasn't it? Which is a bit strange. But the scar would have been nice if it had been kept up. But then, he had hair in the one after that. So
we've got the actual kind of reveal of Blofeld. I think is great. He's sitting in his Dr. Evil chair. He's got the pussycat, and he's in the full-on Blofeld uniform. I think it's great.
I love it.
Now, in terms of his scheme, it's kind of pretty much the Dr. No thing again. He's trying to pit two countries off against each other and spark off World War III. So I guess he tried it with Dr. No, failed, and thought, I'm going to try that one again this time and see how that goes.
I'll do it myself.
I'll do it myself.
But I think it's just a scale of this one, isn't it? It's so big. It's playing America and Russia, the two big superpowers. They're going to take control afterwards. he basically wants this is world domination straight up. This guy he wants to rule the world. Blofeld is going to be the dictator of the whole world. Basically, that's what he's got in mind. Is that
what it is though? Because there's those two Chinese businessmen that like are paying him for, isn't it?
Yeah, but that he's just going to exterminate them straight away. I mean, I'd imagine he would.
Exterminate them. Yeah, no, it's a good point. Actually, he's probably just playing them at their own game, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's going to take the
think
money
so.
for it and then end up killing them too, probably.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's probably the case. I mean, no one's going to last long around him, are they? But no, I think that it's the scale of this is what brings it on home, and the fact that this is where we got the hollowed out volcano, and I know we're kind of going outside of the villainy character, but that is part of Blofeld. This is what's linked with this particular Blofeld, and again, it's pure iconic, and just that scheme of having this rocket in an underground volcano is brilliant. I think it's fantastic, and again, kind of a bit like in Goldfinger, and I suppose to a certain extent from Russia with Love, Thunderball, he's got his big army of followers, just the minions, as it were, in their whites and reds and yellows, running around, helping him out. I think he's fantastic. I think it's great. And the scheme was one which, it brought M out into the field for the first time, so that was a big thing. And it was purely on a global scale, wasn't it? Because the Dr. No one was just toppling missiles, and it didn't. It could have led to something, but this is really massive. I guess
large scale, all out World War III style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of how he gets kind of his plan is foiled. It could have easily been, he could have easily avoided that by just not sending up helicopters to tackle Little Nelly. He should have just stayed quiet in his volcano and just left it at that, and Bond would never have known he was there, as Mr. Alan J. Porter pointed out in our last episode. I guess that I don't know whether that was his order to go and get Bond, or whether that was just some security man in his outfit and thought, I'm going to go up there and take down this helicopter. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, also, there was a bit after that where basically there was a helicopter that was returning to base, wasn't it? Because Bond was with Kissy Suzuki.
Yeah.
Okay, but that wasn't what made Bond. The helicopters attacking Little Nelly wasn't totally what made Bond think, okay, this is where obviously he knew it was in that area, but he didn't know where exactly. And it could have just been helicopters from another island. You never know, sort of thing. But when he found the sort of tunnel with the forging gas, that sort of put the feeler in a little bit. So he thought that was bad. But it was also when he and Kissy were on the mountain having a little smooch, and then that helicopter went down into the mountain. Now the helicopter didn't know Bond was there. Blofeld at that point didn't know Bond was there, so you can't really blame Blofeld for that particular point, because the helicopter was just returning, and that was the main thing that told Bond, okay, it's in here.
That's a good point. Having a little smooch on the mountain is what did it for him. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. So, unlike most Bond villains, we don't see Blofeld's demise in this one, because he escapes. He's on his little monorail, dun, 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 and then off he goes.
That's a good I did like the bit though, because again, he's had Bond under gunpoint a couple of times. Like, obviously, when Bond breaks... I mean, this mission wouldn't have happened if Bond had forgotten his suction cups, would it?
It's true,
He wouldn't have been able to get in, and then Blofeld would have got away. So always carry around a set of suction cups if you got them. And if you haven't, go and buy a pair now.
I wonder if that's just standard operating kit. Is he's just got a little bag of suction cups just in case he needs it.
Yeah. I wonder if he keeps them up his arse, or where does he keep them, or under his boxes or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so I do like the part. He's got Bond under gunpoint, so he's got that bit where this is a price of failure, Mr. Bond, and then he kills Sato, and then literally 10 seconds later he's sitting in his monorail. And then Bond's over, and then he's like, what does he say again? Something like, "I'm going to kill you" or something. What did he say then?
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
Of
no,
course
that's when
it
he
is.
shoots a Sato, isn't it? Or is it?
No,
Is it?
no. That is the last bit. Yeah, that is a
Okay.
bit on the monorail, and then obviously, is it Tiger Tanaka throws a ninja star and it hits his hand.
That's
so
it.
he had a couple of opportunities to
Yeah.
shoot him, but then you see him open that little hidden bit in the wall and press the button and then pull the thing down, which obviously
Yeah.
sets off the actual volcano. So great sort of finish in terms of the film. Obviously we don't know what happens to him, but we know he's going to be back. Bond, I think, they've been face to face for the first time, so I think that was quite important.
I like to think he jumped in his Bartho sub and then went through that tunnel, and that's how he escaped.
I tell you what, I would have loved if that was the case, and that is what I'm going to imagine from now on. That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Definitely. I
Good
like
stuff.
that a lot. Yeah.
So, how do you rate Donald's version of Blofeld up against the villains we've had so far?
Against the villains we've had so far, I think in terms of iconicism,
I don't know.
Iconicism. It's one of those. Iconic, yeah. And basically, I think he's up there. He's probably the most iconic Bond villain of all time.
He would be the centerpiece of the poster.
Yeah,
he would be the
he would
centerpiece of the poster with all of the other villains surrounding him.
But I think if he's the centerpiece at the top, I think Goldfinger would be the centerpiece in the middle, or maybe vice versa. I think they both deserve center attention. I know Blofeld's in more films. I think a lot of people as well, the non-Bond fan, would know of this person who lives in the volcano with a white cat. Not all of them know his name. Certainly not his full name. But a lot of people might not know.
Some of them would say, "Oh, that's Dr. Evil."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or perhaps even Dr. No or whatever. Whereas
Yeah.
Goldfinger, everyone knows. Odd Job, everyone knows. And stuff like that. So perhaps on that side of things, he's not as well known. But purely for look, he's the most iconic Bond villain that there is. He's obviously been in more films than any other Bond villain, so he's got that with him. I think for me personally, he has to be right up there in terms of if you're looking at this particular Blofeld, I'd put him in top 3 of Bond villains. As Blofeld as a character overall, I think some of the others, I'm not as sort of. They're all great, they're all brilliant, but I think this is the one. This is If someone says to me Blofeld, straight away it's Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, definitely.
The others eventually get a look in, but straight away it's
Yeah.
Donald Pleasance.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
I think this has to be the portrayal of Blofeld, isn't it? It really is. Cool. So, speaking of which, let's talk about the next portrayal of Blofeld, which is Telly Savalas from On Her Majesty's Secret
Kojak.
Service. Good old Kojak himself. So, now, obviously, we're going to have to forget the fact that Bond and Blofeld have already met in the previous film, and we're just going to kind of just go with it. And, we're just going to go with what happens. So, the kind of, how do you feel, generally speaking, about Telly as Blofeld?
Well, I like him, actually. I really do. I think, funnily enough, I didn't have Majesties on VHS when I was super young, so it wasn't one that I saw a lot. So I never had that young look at it, a young sort of thought about Telly Savalas Blofeld. But no, I've grown. I really do like it. I think he obviously offers a different angle to Pleasance. He's obviously a lot more physical. He sort of tries it on with Tracy a bit, and obviously that's a bit more suitable with his sort of portrayal. He's very snobbish as well. He's got a lot of snobbery to him, which is great. He brings a sort of classness to it, I guess. In terms of sort of the food and the drink and the surroundings and stuff like that. But again, he's still ruthless in terms of how he killed Campbell the climber and stuff like that. And I think he's a bit more of an action hero baddie rather than a visual baddie. I guess.
He's a lot more of a physical presence, isn't he? You wouldn't see Donald on the bobsleigh at the end going down chasing Bond. That just wouldn't happen. You wouldn't see Donald involved in fisticuffs, whereas you would with Telly. So yeah, he's just a more sort of macho, sort of tough guy version of Blofeld, I guess.
I think one of the things he's definitely not got that Pleasance has is the creepiness factor. That like we've mentioned before, the sort of sliminess, the smelling of vinegar or whatever it might be. But Pleasance had that creepiness about him, and Telly Savalas hasn't got that. You could meet him and have a pleasant conversation if you wanted to. So he's got that side to him, but I think he definitely loses out on creepiness factor.
And we said before as well, there's the scene. He's, for me, is the only sexual Blofeld in the sense that Donald, totally asexual, not interested in it at all. I would say the same about Charles Grey, whereas Telly is obviously, he's trying to romance Tracy.
Charles Grey had a little bit, didn't he? Because he had Tiffany Case and he was talking about her, and he dressed up as a woman, and he was talking about her behind and stuff. But he never sort of played on it much, did he? He knew it was there. So he recognised it, but he didn't go for it. Whereas obviously Telly Savalas did.
Yeah, good point. So I like him. I would say he would be my second favourite Blofeld so far. And in terms of
out of the two,
so far. In terms of his scheme, I think this is another different one, isn't it? This isn't just trying to take over the world. His scheme is to get a pardon for his past crimes by kind of essentially holding the world to ransom with all sorts of disease and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Which again, I feel like that's a clever plot, isn't it? It's not just hijacking some bombs or whatever. It's different. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I love the fact that it is a bit fantastical and a bit surreal, the whole brainwashing these angels of death to potentially release this virus Amiga, which obviously could kill the world or whatever. So I do love that it's got this. So I do like watching I like the real Bonds, the realist Bonds from Russia's, but I do like the ones that do slip into this area where things are a little bit fantastical. Like On Her Majesty's, you'd say, is a realist film, but it has these little snippets of fantasy, and that whole sort of Angels of Death is definitely one part of it. So I think the scheme is great in terms of doing the whole allergy research cover on Peace, Glory and everything. But the one thing that I've said, and I think I said when we reviewed the film, was if someone said, well, I'm going to destroy the world, or you can pardon my past crimes and recognise me as a count, you're going to say, well, all right then.
Yeah.
There you go. And I think it almost needed perhaps something else. I don't know because is it too easy? I mean, would anyone really risk the whole threat?
Yeah, you could say, okay, here's your pardon, and then just get him anyway. Couldn't you? I mean, it's the Secret Service. You could just have him assassinated afterwards, couldn't you? So I guess there is that side of things, but it's one of those things that you just have to go with. I guess it's another one of those.
Yeah, no, I agree. What do you think of his sort of appearance in terms of we mentioned about his physicalness, but in terms of obviously he's bald, so at least that's some consistency. Mm-hmm. The lack of earlobes supposedly relates to the story. What do you think of his look in general? Do you think?
I think it's great. I think I wish we'd have seen the scar as well. I think that would have just been the icing on the cake. But I think it's good. I think it's good to see a tougher Blofeld. You've still got the pussycat and stuff, and he's a smoker and a drinker, which you don't really see from Donald. I do think he's great. And at the same time, if Bond and Telly were to have fisticuffs, it would be a tough fight. It wouldn't be easy like Donald. I feel like you could just put your hand on Donald's forehead and that would be it. He'd be neutralised. Whereas with Telly, it would be a bit different. There'd be some fisticuffs involved. Yeah. But yeah. So again, I feel like it's one of those where you've got a different interpretation of the same character, and I think it's right up there with Donald. Not as up there with Donald, because Donald's just like a whole different ball game in terms of his iconic level, but yeah, I think it's great. So in terms of the kind of the plot getting foiled and his eventual demise, which we don't, again, he gets away, he doesn't get killed like most of the other Bond villains. How do you feel about the kind of that kind of climax of the film where it all goes tits up for Blofeld?
Well, the actual climax of the film is probably one of my favourites in the series, the whole attack on Peace Gloria. Obviously, Bond had to destroy the chemical lab there, because that was where the Amiga, obviously the girls, there's two sides to it. The girls who were brainwashed, they had to kind of stop that. So by destroying the sort of, brainwashing area, in terms of where the tapes were and all of that. But also the
nerve centre of
the
the
nerve centre,
operation.
shall we say? Exactly, and the virus and all that. So basically, that was the way to do it. If Peace Gloria was still standing within the film terms, Blofeld would have gotten away with it. So that was the only way to do it, was to destroy the nerve centre, exactly. Which sets up a great scene, doesn't it? A great sort of situation where Bond, and with help of Draco and his mates, sort of have to take it down. And fantastic. I thought it was great. And again, Blofeld's involved. He's got the guns, he's shooting, and then once he knows time's up and it's going to go, then we get a great sort of one-on-one with Bond and Blofeld, where Bond's chasing Blofeld. Blofeld jumps a snow bridge. Bond only just gets there. Then obviously we're onto the bobsleds, and it's a great speedy action battle. And then they obviously get onto the same bobsled eventually, and still battling it out. And and then for the first time we see Blofeld get hurt, which was quite an interesting take, I think.
Foiled by a tree branch.
Yes.
And there we have it. So again, Blofeld escapes. We have obviously the scene at the end where he comes back at the end and kills Tracy. Well, I say Bunt kills Tracy. She's the one with the gun.
Yeah, Bunt does. She doesn't do it. Blofeld's got his sort of neck collar thing on.
Neck brace on.
But yet he's still driving. So
he's still mobile on some level. So there's that, and he lives to fight another day, and then and that's it. And then so in terms of Telly versus Donald, I think there's no argument in saying that Donald kind of wins in terms of the iconic level of him. But I would say that Telly is right up there as well. I love him. If he'd have played him more than once, I'd have been happy with that. Good stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I think he's brilliant. I think in terms of the film, he's perfect as a Blofeld for that film. I think he's great. Yeah, definitely.
Good stuff. So moving on to Blofeld number 3, visual Blofeld number 3, not the dude behind the the glass or whatever.
Yeah.
Charles Gray in Diamonds Are Forever, which has to be said is a whole nother ballgame of Blofeld, a whole different interpretation. He's got a rather fine head of silvery hair, yet he still favours the Nehru jacket, and he still likes the Pussycats. Yeah. So there we go. So my initial reaction to Charles Gray is he's all right. Compared to the other two, not really up there for me at the same level. What do you think?
Yeah. No, again, I do agree with you. It's quite funny, actually, because I think we had a couple of posts reasonably recently saying that Charles Gray were their favourite Blofelds. And when I hear that, it does shock me quite a bit, because initially I wouldn't think it is. But that Blofeld, he does have kind of a lot of fun with it, doesn't he? He knows he does seem to have fun with it. He's got the sort of snobberish side as well, and I don't know. Again, like you said, it's just completely different. I've always thought I would have liked him to have been bald, but then the whole thing with the plastic surgery where he gets his clones. Maybe. Yeah. Part of it was he wanted to have a head of hair, so they did a hair transplant at the same time. I don't know.
That's it.
I would have liked to have seen that, but at least, like you said, he's got the cat still. So for me personally, he's not quite up there with the other two. But again, within the film, he suits Diamonds Are Forever, doesn't he? He suits what that film is trying to do.
Yes. I feel like Charles Gray, again, he's not much of a physical threat, I don't think. But he's very sort of like a sarcastic Blofeld, a witty, sarcastic Blofeld, which is kind of amusing in its own way. I like him. I don't dislike him. I just don't think. I think he's I feel like he could almost have been a different character rather than Blofeld. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like he could have been his own man, which obviously is kind of what they were originally doing. They were going to have Goldfinger's brother, weren't they, in Diamonds Are Forever?
That's right.
So maybe something along those lines. But in terms of the scheme, I know you like one element of his scheme massively in this film, which is the wonderful satellite. But how do you feel about the plot of this one?
Okay, so this one is basically they're trying to get as many diamonds as they can. So to make this satellite using laser refraction that they can obviously laser the Earth. This was back in the day where they didn't quite know, I guess, what might or might not work. But visually, it was an idea. So this is again this is back to holding the world to ransom in a way. So before we had the pardon and the recognise the title. Now we're back to I'm going to destroy cities with my laser. So we are back to this sort of side of things. So that's kind of interesting, I think.
Well, I would just like to interject there and say that is another iconic Austin Powers-ism, isn't it, with the whole laser beam thing.
Yeah.
So there is that, destroying cities from orbit with a laser. So there's some value in that. Go on, continue. Apologies for butting in.
No, it's all right. So I think it's almost like it is a bit of a classic sort of idea in terms of, like you said, a bit like the Austin Powers thing. For whatever reason, it doesn't. I'm not as appealed by it compared to some of the previous ones. I think it is a sort of a light-hearted manner. He is, like you said, sarcastic. He's quite cerebral, which I liked. So, he could outwit Bond. He, again, like Dr. No, he knows what Bond is thinking when he's walking along his map on the floor and with the missile, and he outwits Bond with his clones and his copies. So that's quite interesting. The drag thing is something else. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice, wasn't it? I could potentially see Donald pulling that off. I don't think I could see Telly pulling that off.
No, I definitely couldn't see Telly pulling that off. No, not at all. I guess it's just different, isn't it? I mean, what are your thoughts on the sort of idea, the sort of scheme that he had and stuff like that?
Well, I think I feel like at this point, Bond had become like the pastiche of itself. Like by this point, Bond Mania had happened. You had all the copycats, the Man from U.N.C.L.'s and the Man Like Flints and all those kind of shows, Mission Impossibles and all that. And it was kind of like, how do you stay above all those things? Because you're the original. And I feel like it just sort of became the point where, okay, lasers in space, blow up the whole city, kind of take it huge and massive and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, it's a bit silly. It's a bit cartoony. But, it was, the early 70s at that point, I suppose. Yeah. And that's what you do. But it's all right, I feel, at this point. Now, in terms of how the plot is prevented, I think for me, this one, like it's getting a little bit into comedy sort of territory again. The whole shenanigans with the tape and being, down Tiffany's undercrackers and then being swapped out and all that kind of stuff. That whole sort of thing, where she's got the machine gun and falls off the oil rig and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit silly in it, but it's all right. You've just got to sort of take it for what it is and go with it and have fun with it, I suppose. Yeah. But for me, like that whole ending, and again, we don't see Blofeld's demise in this one. We don't really find out what happens to him because obviously he's in the Bartho sub. He gets hoisted up and he's just hanging off the side of the kind of the crane there on the oil rig, and we never find out how he does escape, which he obviously does. So I don't know, a bit of an open-ended one, that one. How do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I do like the fact he's got his Bartho sub. I think he's a good choice of henchman in terms of when he picks Winton Kid and Bambi. Did Bambi and Thumper work for him, or do they? I assume if they're covering Willard White, that's the other aspect to it. Obviously, he's kidnapped Willard White, this Howard Hughes alike, and is portraying him from his penthouse. So that was kind of an interesting idea, I thought. How he sort of ruled and no one sort of could see him. And he had obviously Bert Saxby as well, didn't he, and one or two others. But again, this is very much in the league of, it's a lot of sitting down, pressing buttons, so it's not definitely not very physical, like you mentioned. But
I would say he's almost like a 60s Batman villain. Do you know what I mean? He's standing at the back while everybody else does all the hard work.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. In terms of how the sort of plot is presented, I mean, the whole oil rig thing is a little bit tepid for me. And like you said, the sort of switching the tapes is a bit. It is actually quite 60s Batman in a way. That you could easily see an episode of that's how they foiled the Riddler or the Joker or something in 60s Batman, isn't it? So it is a bit like that. But you know, he definitely has some plus points. I think the fact he's so arrogant and you know, witty and sarcastic, you know. For within this film, I think it's good and stuff. But overall, I wouldn't put him on level terms with either of the predecessors.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Chris, and I'm going to say, out of all the films so far, he would be my least favourite villain. I
would agree with you, but like we said before, there are people out there, and this is their favourite Blofeld. You know, they love the fact that he sort of takes a piss out of Bond, and he's quite sort of light-hearted and having fun with it all, you know, taking over the world. Oh, isn't this fun sort of thing? And obviously, you know, that appeals to some people. So
well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Is there's a bit of Bond for everybody. But there we go. But again, I still love him, even though he's my least favourite of these films so far. So you know, whatever, doesn't matter.
They've all exactly. They've all got something good. So I would. He'd be an all right Blofeld to work for. In terms of who you'd want to work for, Pleasant Blofeld, I think would be.
You'd end
be
up
shit
pretty
creek,
quick, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I suppose Savalas, if you could ski all right and you were good with a gun, you might be all right with Savalas.
I imagine
Blofeld.
I'd want to hang out in the pub with Savalas. I think you'd have a good, like he'd be a good, like you wouldn't want to work for him, but as an equal, you'd have a good chat and he'd be good value. Charles Gray, I think, would be quite a funny boss to have. I think he'd be, he'd have that dry sense of humour that could be quite fun.
As long as you don't get on his bad side, you're doing all right.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
So moving on to the new generation, we've got Mr. Big himself. Now, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we've had clones with Charles Gray's Blofeld, but we kind of have something along those lines, but not really, in the sense that you have Mr. Big, who is really the Dr. Kananga. So we've got sort of two kind of villains in one, which is a bit Die Another Day, really, isn't it? That's kind of just jumped into mind a little bit.
Yeah, it has a bit, I suppose, with the dual sort of thing there. But and also it's quite good because the reveal, I think we mentioned previously, you know, the Dr. No was revealed quite late into the film. Although we see Mr. Big and we see Dr. Kananga, obviously that actual reveal isn't until, 2/3 of the way in the film, something like that. So that's quite nice. Visually, when you look at Mr. Big, you know something's not quite right. You can't put your money on what exactly. You know it's not quite right. But I still think they did enough of a job that it looked good and the differences and so on. And obviously when he was in character, he was this tough, Harlem gangster sort of thing. And then obviously he was a bit more refined when he was Kananga and Prime Minister of San Monique. So, but I think this character now has a very interesting background. You can see ultimately, I guess it is greed in a way because he just wants to make money from selling heroin. That's basically what he wants to do. Yeah. But I still think he's got an interesting background because he's got those sort of split sort of characters that he uses. He's got the whole, uses the whole voodoo, land of voodoo to sort of to protect the sort of poppies and all of that, which is interesting. He's got the best collection of henchmen, I think, in the series in terms of how many he's got.
Definitely,
some really good ones, and he's a vicious bugger as well. When you see what he did to Solitaire when he wasn't happy with her, proper knocked her for 6. I mean, this guy can be a nasty piece of work. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so I would say that Mr. Big is one of the more interesting villains in the series, right? So in the sense that we've got a parallel with Dr. No, which is the use of superstition to instill fear. So with Dr. No, we had, the dragon tank thing.
Oh, yeah.
with Kananga, we've got the whole solitaire thing and all the voodoo-ness and Baron Samedi and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We've got the dual personality with the Mr. Big versus Dr. Kananga. And I feel like even though his plan is, a drug thing, heroin, which we've seen in a billion action films before, like his plan is a bit different. He wants to just give it away for free, which has echoes of Goldfinger, doesn't it, in a sense? He wants to give all this heroin away for free, get everybody hooked, and then the follow-up is when he makes his money by selling it to everyone, which is kind of a little genius idea, I think, really.
Yeah. I think Sanchez should have followed in his footsteps.
He should have, absolutely.
And then, there he would have been. No, I do agree, because you do think, drug lord, just trying to do that. But the fact that he's got this idea of giving it away, like you said, through his Filiev Soul restaurants, and then obviously eventually waits until the number of addicts has doubled and then starts to market it to be very expensive. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. I do agree. I think there's a lot to this character. The background is great, I think. And I think that adds to Live and Let Die, the film, as well, a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love him. I think he's great. What do you think in terms of, like, obviously, his look when he's Mr. Big compared to when he's Dr. Kananga? Do you think they're visually... there's enough difference between the two?
Yeah, again, you kind of know what's happening, but at the same time, like, it could have looked awful. Like, 1973, the makeup on Mr. Big could have been terrible, but it was good enough to get by, I think. I think he looks scarier as Mr. Big than he does as Kananga. But then again, I guess that's why he assumed the Mr. Big thing to do that. So yeah, I think that kind of the whole big reveal of Mr. Big to Kananga is great.
Fantastic.
And all that kind of stuff. So I also think that the dynamic between Kananga and Solitaire is really interesting as well. There's that whole kind of backstory there, and him losing his temper with her because she sleeps with Bond and all that kind of stuff, and all that. And again, really the way he's foiled is just some those kind of little limpet mine type things in the poppy fields and all that kind of stuff. But his death. That is a little bit of a different story. What do you think about the death of Kananga?
Well, I mean, yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, for a lot of people, it is over the top. I guess in a way, well, it is in a way. But for me personally, even though it's a bit crazy, and even though, it never really happened for real, I can almost allow myself to enjoy it just because it's funny.
Yeah.
Like with some people with perhaps the Charles Gray Blofeld or certain scenes in Diamonds, this is kind of like one of those type scenes, isn't it? If it had appeared in Diamonds and Mr. Wint had blown up like that, it wouldn't have been out of place, in that film. And I think I can allow myself to watch it and not be angry. Whereas I know quite a few people might be. How about you?
Yeah, I think it weirdly, like, it's Roger Moore. I feel like it's before Roger Moore really became the Roger Moore Bond that we kind of know and remember, in the sense that he's still quite hard-edged in Man with the Golden Gun and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't get proper Roger until we hit Spy Love Me Moonraker kind of levels. So it feels like what came later, just in Live and Let Die, I guess. But you're right, if that had showed up in Diamonds, it would have been, it would have been totally in tune with that movie. And I feel like it is a little bit out of place, but it's like the Goldfinger death. It kind of looks a bit silly, and it's
exactly.
Not, it could perhaps been done a little bit better, but still, whatever. We'll live with it. We'll go with it.
Yeah. Exactly, that's a good parallel with the Goldfinger death. Actually, similar, and the fact that he owns an underground headquarters and a monorail,
points in his favour.
Yeah, definitely, it puts him up on another scale, and he has so many people working for him as well, which is quite cool.
Yeah, good stuff.
I think he's a really, really solid villain, and I think he's another one that's underrated as well. I think he's along the Dr. No levels in terms of being Dr. No is probably more iconic and classic, but both of those two villains I think are probably underrated in the Bond canon for me.
if we imagine that poster on the wall and then have, a lot of casual Bond fans walking past, they're probably not going to point to Kananga/Mr. Big, and they might not know his name, like you were saying before. You'd know who Goldfinger was, who like your Odd Jobs and your Blofelds were and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But you probably wouldn't know Mr. Big, and you probably wouldn't know Largo. I imagine they're kind of on a similar keel in terms of the casual fans. Obviously, people like us know they are, but casual fans are perhaps not as familiar. But there we go. But
I keep on imagining this poster now, and the image of Mr. Big is pulling away the face mask,
nice.
That's his thing. Yeah. Oh man, we got to get this poster made.
We'll have to commission an artist to do the Bond villain poster. Yeah, completely.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So next up, we've got a rather intriguing one. Now, there's a fair bit to be said about this guy. Mm-hmm. Francisco Scaramanga, the greatest assassin in the world, the man with the golden gun. How do you feel about this fella?
Well, I love him. I think he's a fantastic villain. The fact that he's kind of an equal to Bond in many respects, I think is great. I think the chemistry between Moore and Christopher Lee is superb. I think it's like Scaramanga just brings Man with the Golden Gun up so many levels. He is clearly and by far the best thing in that film. I think he's brilliant. He's class, hasn't he? He's got a level of class. Obviously, the fact that he is the best assassin, or at least the most well-paid assassin in the world, is great as well. He's I think he's brilliant. He's not too. He doesn't sort of treat his mistresses all that well.
No,
but
he likes rubbing his gun all over their mouth and stuff. Doesn't he? He likes getting it in there and up the nose and all that kind of stuff. He likes a bit of that.
Yeah. I think he'd easily be on the Bond villain poster without a doubt. I think not. I think obviously the golden gun itself is completely memorable, and I know it's a gadget, but it goes hand in hand with him as a villain, and I think that's a supremely clever idea, and I think he's great.
So here's my thoughts. Now, in the book, Scaramanga is sort of little more than like a thug, like a heavy gangster, typical gangster kind of heavy thug kind of guy. So this is like a unique imagining of Scaramanga for the film. Now, he is like the anti-Bond, isn't he? He's like the dark side of Bond, the evil twin almost. He's the best at what he does. He only needs one shot and all that kind of stuff. And, he likes to surround himself with women in bikinis and all that kind of business. He's just the baddie version of Bond, I guess. And I think he's brilliant. I love that whole thing. He's obviously a connoisseur of fine wines and foods and all that kind of stuff. He's got an amazing island base and all that kind of business. Obviously,
that base is so good, isn't it?
It is good,
obviously you've been there, but it is class, isn't it?
Obviously, he needs some kind of disfigurement, so they throw in an extra nipple, which I think is a funny little thing.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
But I think, whether the casual fan, if he was on this poster and he wasn't holding the golden gun, or whether the casual fan would know who he was, I don't know. But that image of him, like, just putting that gun together and shooting high fat in total cold blood, I think is good. Brilliant. I love that.
One of the best scenes in the film, definitely.
And that gun, just that gun alone is one of the most iconic things in the whole series. Even in, do you remember the GoldenEye video game on the Nintendo 64? Yes, there was the golden gun round, wasn't there? And you could get that gun and it would just take one shot. That was the business. And all that kind of stuff. So I think he's right up there. And it's really the first time we see like a true equal to Bond. Like, I feel like Telly Savalas, maybe even Largo could have held their own in fisticuffs with Bond. Yeah. But I feel like Scaramanga is the first one who's on an equal footing to Bond in terms of like the way you see him at the beginning and he's training himself at all times, like deadly training routines. And he's got a midget butler, which is amazing.
Yeah. What a choice in henchman. I mean, superb. But not only is he training his body, he's also, when you see, obviously he's got an effigy of Bond or like a model of Bond, that is who he wants to kill. He's got a lot of respect for Bond because he knows how good Bond is. People are aware of Scaramanga, and just his name is enough to put fear into people. I love the fact that like you said, he only needs the one and gets these special golden bullets. That scene with High Fat's amazing. It's so good. He's just got so many things that you want a Bond villain to have, like his own island, dresses well, looks good. I don't know. He's just brilliant, isn't he?
He's the business.
Brilliant, fantastic. What do you think of the way he looks then? In terms of he tends to wear, what is it, the cotton suit with the black tie and the gold jewellery, and the third nipple is great. I love that. So I think that's good.
I think it's great. Like from the very beginning, you see him on that little beach and he's hanging out with Maud and Nick Nack and all that kind of stuff. And just the fact that you see, like you say, you see the statue of Bond in his base in his little fun house, and it's like from the word go, you know his whole existence is about defeating Bond, and I think that's really the first time we've seen that in the series.
Definitely.
Obviously, the plotting from Russia is to kind of get revenge with Bond, so that's the kind of beginning of that, with the Red Grant strangling the guy at the beginning. But it feel like one man's quest versus Bond is great. It's a great one to look at. Now, what about his scheme? We've got the whole Solex agitator and all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that angle?
Yeah, so this side of things, I'm not as I think it's okay. I think, this guy earns £1 million a kill anyway. I know he doesn't kill all the time, but he's got his own island, that he's created his headquarters out of. So in terms of money, he doesn't really need more money. So the whole thing with the Solex agitator is obviously to try and with the solar efficiency, because of oil and gas and everything, as we still have coal and everything as we still have nowadays, is to try and sell this solar power to basically to make money, isn't it? Because he wants to sell this solar power to the highest bidder, accept money off the Arabs to keep it off the market, so people still use oil and gas or whatever. So his plot is basically to get rich or make money, but he already has lots of money, and he does have sympathies with the Red Chinese, doesn't he? Because he's supposedly in Red Chinese waters, so they let him stay there. So they're obviously getting something out of it as well. What are they getting out of it? Maybe the money or Solex power.
Yeah,
sure.
I feel like his plot is almost it doesn't really matter all that much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's sort of a bit in the background for me for that. I feel like it's almost. I feel like the main thing and only thing should have just been his quest against Bond. Like the Solex agitator thing, it's all right, but it's sort of just a bit of background noise for me, really. I don't feel it really adds much to the kind of the whole thing. But yeah, so in terms of like how he gets foiled and the death of Scaramanga, I really like that, in the sense that at the beginning you see his fun house with the kind of random hoodlum, and then Bond's going to end up in there, and that's how it ends, and he beats him at his own game. I think that's great. What do you think about that final showdown between Bond and Scaramanga?
I think it's brilliant. I think it doesn't come to a shock. It doesn't come as a shock when Bond replaces the mannequin, and that's how he kills. I think straight away, as soon as you see it, even as a youngster, I remember thinking, "Oh yeah, well that's Bond's going to take his place." I remember thinking that straight away. But even though that's going to happen, that doesn't detract from how it gets to that point. And I really like that whole showdown bit. Obviously, they start off back to back on the beach, and Bond turns and fires once it hits 20, and Scaramanga's not there, so he's got to go searching for him. And at first you see the same thing that happens in the pre-titles, where he comes across the sort of fake gangster, the laugh, the this, that, and the other, the fun show. But then it gets to a point where he hits like the glass edge, and he goes beyond that. And sort of the music changes, and he loses his gun when he's on the scaffolding, doesn't he? And then it obviously cuts to him being the mannequin, and there's a nice atmosphere when that's going on. It's a nice sort of tension, I think. So I do like that bit a lot, and the fact as well, just prior to that, Bond arrived by seaplane. Scaramanga, he's got the man with the golden gun has got the golden laser, hasn't he? The solar powered laser, which obviously there. So you know that Bond's not going to leave. Obviously, he's got a junk, Scaramanga's Chinese junk. But Bond doesn't know about that, does he? So Bond thinks he's stuck on the island. Mm-hmm. So there's only one way it's going to happen, and one of them's got to die. So the showdown is great. I think
it's good stuff, isn't it? So one shot is all Bond needs to take down Scaramanga. Yes. I thought that was also a nice little touch. And it's good. I really like the kind of, the equal footing that they're both on and all that kind of stuff. I think Scaramanga is a great villain. He's right up there. Definitely goes on the poster.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's up there with the best of them. So
and I do like the way when he's shot at the end, the look on his face, knowing that Bond has bested him. Like, he was 100% sure he was going to beat Bond. Proper cocky, only needs a one. But once Bond shot him, you see that look on his face, and it's like, shit, how has Bond done that sort of thing? And that's a nice little moment, I think.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Sorry.
That's all right. Good stuff. So that's Scaramanga put to bed. Next up, we've got Karl Stromberg. Now, this is an interesting one because originally Karl Stromberg was meant to be Blofeld again, but old Kevin McClory, God bless him, started causing trouble again, so they scrapped it.
God bless him.
And they invented Karl Stromberg instead. So really, you can kind of see that. When you look at Karl Stromberg, he almost sort of could be Blofeld, couldn't he? You know what I mean? Yeah. He's got that kind of vibe about him. He's got the underwater layer this time instead of the volcano,
which is nice.
It's almost sort of Blofeld. But just by name is the only difference, kind of thing. But how do you feel about Karl?
I think he's an interesting one. I think originally we mentioned that Diamond was going to be Goldfinger's brother.
Yeah.
Well, also in Diamonds there was going to be a super tanker with the laser. So that's how it was originally going to go. Was Diamonds are Forever, Goldfinger's brother, super tanker. So the idea of the super tanker had been there before. But obviously now it's sort of swallowing submarines. Everyone knows, obviously, very similar to You Only Live Twice. But Stromberg himself, I think, he again, this is another Bond villain where it's very much sitting down, pressing the controls. That's how he does his business. He's not, although he's quite physically, his stature's quite tall, he doesn't sort of get involved. He's obviously got Jaws and Chandor to do his dirty work for him. But what I do love about him is this is, I guess, the first time since Goldfinger that we've seen a villain completely obsessed. And his obsession is underwater, the sea, the world, the underwater, all of that. And any time that I see a villain that's obsessed about something, that makes him all the more greater, in my opinion. And the fact is, again, physical disfigurement. He's got the webbed fingers, hasn't he? He doesn't like shaking hands and stuff like that. So that's nice. I think some, the fact that he does sit around and press buttons means that he, there's not a lot going on around that, but he still has a lot of characteristics which I think are pretty cool. His obsessiveness with the underwater is definitely something which I like about him.
Absolutely. So in terms of his kind of like his evil scheme, a lot of people have mentioned that Spy Love Me is all pretty much a remake of You Only Live Twice, in the sense that you have the big spaceship that eats the baby spaceship in You Only Live Twice, and this time you have the big super tanker that eats the little, eats the submarines. So it's the same kind of deal. You've got the underwater base is kind of hollowed out volcano-esque. It's that same kind of vibe. So. How do you feel about like what he's after this time?
Okay, so basically this time he's it's interesting, isn't it? Because he's basically stolen these submarines so he can get the nuclear missiles. So his plan is to send a nuclear missile. Is it one to Moscow, one to is it Washington or New York or something like that? I think it is
one of those.
And so basically he wants to annihilate sort of the first world countries and create a war above so something goes on, and then he gets to live underwater. What is this plot? I know he wants everyone. He basically says, doesn't he? He wants. He's merely accelerating the process. He's basically saying everyone's going to kill themselves. That's the way the world's going. I'm merely accelerating the process. So he's going to kill people, and then live underwater as sort of leader of his underwater city, I guess.
Interesting.
What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, it's we're getting into sort of Moonraker territory, aren't we? A little bit. In the sense that it's almost like the same kind of idea. One's in space, one's underwater.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Carl Stromberg for me is like he'd be on the poster, but I don't think anybody would really know who he was. Like your average casual fan, they'd be like, "Who's that guy?" You know, I don't think he's really unique enough to. You know, his bass is. Don't get me wrong. If you saw that, the bass would probably be on the poster. But I feel like I don't know. He's just not. He doesn't stand out enough above all the others. You know, if you put him next to a Goldfinger or a Dr. No or a Blofeld or a Mr. Big, even it's just like. It's just sort of like just another dude that's a bit nasty.
He's a bit overshadowed by Jaws, really, isn't he?
I guess so. Yeah.
Like Jaws gets the iconicness in that film, and Stromberg not so much. But I do agree. He you know, if you do put him on the poster, not many people are going to know about him, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. With the death of Stromberg, how do you feel about his little table gun thing?
Well, basically, so for Bond to stop his plot, he's got to stop the submarines, hasn't he, from destroying the cities. So, but to get there, he gets his submarines captured on the Leparis, and he has to get into the armory to get the detonator of the nuclear missile so he can get through, and then he can reprogram the submarines to destroy each other. So it's good to see that Bond's kind of stopped that. But that's kind of like plot point number one almost, or you know, objective number one. And then number two is obviously Stromberg then goes to Atlantis. Bond has to follow him. I do like the way that Stromberg captures Anya and takes her with her, leaves Bond behind. So Bond has to come, and then obviously has to try and prevent him there. Now, the actual death, I think the sort of long table gun, like it's like a torpedo basically, isn't it? So it's got sort of underwater links, which is kind of interesting. But when he goes to shoot Bond, it is a little bit obvious, I think, in a way. But I do like the idea, you know, that's his kind of gadget, isn't it, I guess, an under table gun. So I do like that aspect. I do think his actual demise itself is a little bit uninspired. Basically, Bond just shoots him back down the tube and then stands up and shoots him again. And it's like when he then catches up with Anya, and Anya's like, "Oh, where's Stromberg?" All Bond says is he's dead. Normally there'd be a nice little quip to follow that, and you know, he's swimming with the fishes, or I don't know, whatever, you know, something along those lines. And there isn't one, and I think that's mirrored by the actual death. It's just a shame that it wasn't. This is probably another reason why he's not that as remembered as some of the others, because it's a bit of a lame death, in all honesty. What do you think?
I feel pretty much the same about that. It's kind of like he's another one, maybe like the Charles Grey Blofeld for me, in the sense that he sort of it doesn't. There's just not enough about him that really sets him out. I don't think he really has any of those really memorable scenes or memorable lines that sets him above the other villains. You know, all the classic ones have that scene or that line. And Stromberg's another one that just sort of doesn't really do that. You know, maybe the webbed hands could have made more of a feature. I feel like you could easily forget that was even a thing. You know, so I feel like he's a second tier villain, maybe even a third tier villain. Yeah,
I would completely agree. And I think, like, just thinking about possible deaths, surely like something to do with the water, like, you know, maybe he would have gone down the lift down the tube, although obviously Jaws was there later on. But I don't know, I think it just needed more. But I agree, he's definitely not. I would probably say third tier probably.
Yeah.
If you're putting your Goldfingers, your Blofelds, your Dr. No's on the first tier, I think Mr. Big would be sort of your second tier.
Yeah.
And then definitely would have Stromberg sort of below that. I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it's a shame. Like you say, that death is sort of a little bit unmemorable. It's kind of, it's usually the good death has been sort of alluded to from the beginning, like Scaramanga's Funhouse, things like that, whereas with this, it's just sort of like, just falls a bit flat. Really. Yeah. But sorry, Stromberg, we still love you.
We do indeed.
And then moving on to the final villain of this episode, we're going to do this in 2 parts, if we didn't mention that before. We have Mr. Hugo Drax from Moonraker. Now, I must confess, because we're reviewing all the films bit by bit, it's been a long time since I've seen Moonraker because I'm saving myself for the podcast review. So I know you've seen it more recently than I have. So I'm gonna let you kick off the proceedings with a bit of Hugo chat.
Right. Well, straight away, I'm going to say that I love Hugo Drax. I think this is another villain who divides people. I think some people will think that he doesn't put much, that the performance isn't overt. It isn't, he doesn't put much into the performance, Michael Lonsdale, and is very underplayed. And because of that, they're not too keen on him. But I love that about Hugo Drax. I love the fact that it is underplayed, and like he's got this sort of coldness to him. And ruthlessness. I know we sort of use that quite a lot with the villains, but there's something about him which I really love. Hugo Drax, like I think this is megalomania to top all megalomania. You're not going to get a bigger thing than having sort of a city in space and destroying everyone on the world. You won't get bigger than that. But it's the way that he's just, he's wealthy, he owns these mansions. He's basically built up this whole space shuttle sort of idea and vehicles. He obviously lives a life of opulence. He's got his sort of henchmen in Chang, and then later on obviously Jaws as well. Surrounds himself by beautiful women wherever he goes, normally at least 2 at a time. Mm-hmm. He's got the 2. They're not Doberman Pinschers. I'm not sure what the breed of dog they are. I can't remember, but feeds them rare steak, and only by the click of his thumb. So I don't know. I know some people aren't too fussed with Drax, but for me personally, I really do like him. I think he's a good villain.
So there's that thing, like we said with Dr. No, isn't it? There's like the minimal movement and the emotionless, expressionless sort of angle. That I guess that's what you're barking at when people say that you say that stuff. But I feel like that just makes you more creepy when you're like that, And it's just a bit like there's definitely a style of Bond villain that's like that. Dr. No being one, and Hugo Drax is another. And I think in the book, if I remember, I think he's ginger in the book.
He is,
and there's that great scene. I mean, obviously the book is completely different to the film, but there's that great scene when they're playing bridge, and M's like, basically M comes to Bond and says, "There's something about this Drax that I need you to find out. I know he's cheating. I need you to find out how he's doing it." And then there's that amazing kind of bridge scene with Bond versus Drax kind of thing. And I wish they'd have used that in this film because that's such a cool sequence. But yeah, I haven't seen this film in a little while because I've been saving myself. But I think Drax is up there. If you're going to have a Bond in space movie, and your villain is going to want to start a super race of kind of perfect genetic specimens, then he's probably the kind of guy that would be into that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. No, definitely. That his sort of. The feel to his character is very much in that vein, isn't it? I think also the way he sort of dresses as well is quite interesting. And he's perfectly manicured, not manicured. What is it called? Perfectly shaven beard. What is it called when you
shaped beard? I suppose, or
shaped beard, trimmed beard, or whatever. Yeah. I just like him, and I like the fact that he's probably tried to kill Bond more than any other of the villains in the series. I mean, I'm just saying that out there now because, he tries to kill him. Get people to kill him is what I mean. Obviously when they're shooting, there's a guy in the tree. In Venice, there's a guy on the coffin boat with a knife. There with Chang, it's on the on the zero gravity, not zero gravity, the G-force sort
machine
of thingy. Obviously in the glass factory as well, and various instances with Jaws as well. I don't know. It just seems that Drax just wants to, it tries to kill him quite a lot, which I like. But again, it's almost like he knows that Drax is a baddie. Drax knows that he's after him, but they still are civilized with one another. And Drax has got an immortal line, look after Mr. Bond, see that some harm comes to him. Now that is an iconic line. That's a great one. It's a great line. I do like him. I like him a lot.
He's a good lad. He does have that sort of. He does have a look to him as well that's kind of a little bit unique, isn't he? It's that sort of sort of slick back hair and the perfectly shaped beard, like you say. I don't know, it gives him that's Hugo Drax. I don't know, again, how do you feel the casual fan would feel? Do you think they would recognise him or not? Do you think they would say, that's the dude from Moonraker? Or do you think they would know his name is Hugo Drax?
Probably not. No, I think he's definitely more memorable than Carl Stromberg. And the name would be easier to remember. I guess if he's wearing a Drax Industries top, then they might do.
That is true.
But for me, he'd definitely be on the poster. But I think the casual fan probably wouldn't know, but would know what film he's from. I'd imagine. So what do you think about his scheme then? Because this is quite an interesting one.
So it's kind of the whole, the master race in space kind of thing, isn't it? It's the whole, I suppose it's the kind of the Nazi thing, I suppose, at the end of the day, the perfect specimens and all that kind of shit.
That's it. It is indeed.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, we're in kind of like super crazy territory a little bit, aren't we? It's like those old school Flash Gordon serials in the 40s and 50s and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? It's that vibe definitely, and that's obviously where Star Wars came from, so that's the vibe they're going for. So I mean, it's the ultimate. I'd feel like that's the ultimate Bond villain plot, isn't it? Trying to create a master race of perfect humans in space. It's like it's like the ultimate sort of like that to an extreme, isn't it?
I would have that.
So it's not Fleming's Bond, is it? Really, it's not. It's not really a clever plot. It's not like Goldfinger's plot or even Mr. Big's plot. It's kind of. It's sort of like that obvious kind of world domination thing. So it is what it is. It's Moonraker at the end of the day. So it's that kind of movie. So it is what it is, But in terms of like how it kind of ends, we've said this before, haven't we? Like the first sort of 2/3 of Moonraker is great. And then when it goes into space, that's when it kind of loses its shit a little bit and goes a little bit too far, or a lot too far, as some may argue. So, you got that, the whole space station showdown, shooting the orbs out. It's all right. It kind of does what it does. It doesn't, at this point, it doesn't feel like Bond for me anymore. It feels like something else. But, I kind of, again, the death of Drax with the kind of wrist dart gun and all that kind of stuff. Where do you stand on that? For me, that's kind of along the same lines as Stromberg's death. Like, it's a bit underwhelming, but the fact that he's being sucked out into space kind of makes it more poignant, I guess.
No, exactly. I think it's far better than the Stromberg death. For me, if Stromberg had ended up in the water, then that would have been the equivalent. But the fact he was just shot is nothing. Whereas the Drax one, you've got the nice payoff. Desolated Mr. Bond, heartbroken Mr. Drax. Nice little line, obviously the cool Q wrist dart gun, and then take a step for mankind. In he goes, and then he gets sucked. I think it's a good death. I think it's a perfect death for Hugo Drax, isn't it? Within that film, I mean, you wouldn't get a better death because obviously that's how he has to die, is being sucked out of space. So I think that's good. I think the whole how the plot is overcome, obviously. They hijack the Moonraker shuttle, Bond and Holly Goodhead, and end up at the space station, which obviously they then undo the radar jamming system, so everyone knows they're there. So the good guys are going to come up to attack them. And then it does go a bit crazy with laser fire everywhere. And then obviously 3 globes get released before the others are stopped, and the thing sort of blows up. So then they have to chase it down, and then it is pretty much very much Star Wars, isn't it? You know, Star Wars in the trench of the Death Star. I can't automatic's not working, so I'm switching to manual. Exactly the same. It's carbon copy basically.
Use the force. I hadn't spotted that actually. You're right.
Yeah, I would say it's exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same. And obviously the third one is always the hardest, and it's getting close. But I think again, okay, it goes a bit into crazy territory, but I am able to let it go a bit. And go with it, just because, you know,
it's Roger.
It is,
and we love Roger.
Yeah, we love Roger.
Roger can do whatever he wants, as far as I'm concerned. If he wants to go to the moon, I'm going to let him. I'm going to be up for it.
Maybe that's where the sketch is, Roger and Daniel Craig.
There you go, maybe.
Yeah. But no. Going back to Hugo Drax, I think he's definitely right up there. I'd definitely put him above Stromberg in terms of the villain list. I know they're quite similar in terms of the setup, but I'd put him above Stromberg. I'm not sure in terms of everyone so far. I mean, are we going to try and rate them of everyone so far or not, or just give a general feel for it?
I would say it's going to be difficult to put them in order, but I would say if we had like a tier of villains, top tier, second tier, third tier, maybe we can kind of arrange them on that kind of level. So I'm going to just go with it. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say, for me, my top tier villains will be Dr. No, Rosa Clip, Goldfinger. I would say Donald's Blofeld. I would say, how far have we gone? Let me just...
That's 4.
That's 4. Hold on a minute. So
4 out of 11, I think it is so far.
And then...
12.
Donald's Blofeld... Yeah. I'm not sure if Scaramanga is top tier or second tier.
No, that's exactly what I'm thinking. He's halfway in between the two for me.
He's like 1.5 tier for me.
Yeah.
What about your top tier villains?
That's exactly mine. I'd say Dr. No definitely, Rosa Globe definitely, Goldfinger without a doubt, Donald Pleasance, Blofeld without a doubt. All right, let's leave it to 4. So top tier will be those 4. Second tier, definitely Scaramanga.
Yeah.
I'd say for me probably. Right, let's go through them again. So we've had Largo. Would you put Largo second tier or third tier? I would
have him as a second tier, definitely.
Second tier Largo. I'd have Telly Savalas, Majesty's Blofeld as a second tier. So that leaves one space left for Mr. Big, which could be a good one, or Hugo Drax.
Okay. I don't feel you have to limit them to 4. I feel like if they're both tier 2, then they're tier 2.
In that case, I'd stick them both in for tier 2.
And then in tier 3, I would put Charles Gray's Blofeld and Carl Stromberg.
Yes, exactly the same as me. So that's where we are so far. Yeah, exactly the same.
Interesting. So, James Bond Radio listeners, take to the social medias, take to Facebook and Twitters, and let us know where you rate your Bond villain so far. Because I imagine there's some people going, "What?
Yeah, exactly. Right, Charles Gray's tier 1. Yeah. Stromberg's my favourite. What are you talking about?
Exactly. It's going to happen.
It is. So if you can do the same 3-tier system, so I think we've got, how many do we have there? I think we had 11, didn't we? Yeah, so we had 11. So if you can put them however many you want, but don't just put them all on tier 1 because that's cheating. So you literally have to use all 3 tiers and then sort of divide up those characters within those 3 tiers. And then it'll be interesting to see what people think.
Yeah, because there's 2 levels of thinking about things. There's nerds and geeks like us who love Bond and know everything about it, or as much as one can. And then you have the casual Bond film, like the people in the street who go to see all the Bond films, but they're not mental like we are. No. And, you know, it's kind of how, it's like Hubby said to George Lazenby, isn't it? I don't say you're a star. You don't say you're a star. It's the public who tell you you're a star. Exactly. So it's like those casual fans, whether they would recognize that character or not, whether they would recognize that villain's name or whatever it is. So it's interesting to give it some thought. So there's obviously so many villains. We're going to do this in a 2-parter. So we will follow this up at a later date. So that's the first section of the villains done and dusted. So that brings us on to some Bond facts.
We like Bond facts, don't we? Flames, explosion, fire, Bond fact.
There it is. That's what I was waiting for.
Okay, so what I've actually done is I've written up a few which cover all the Bond villains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split them. So we take just the Bond villains that we've got so far.
Cool.
And there's a general one as well. Okay. So a lot of this we might have covered already. But anyway, Bond fact number 1. In 1962, Dr. No was the first James Bond villain who helped to set the benchmark for all future Bond villains, including being open to dining with Bond while explaining his devilish plot, having a physical disfigurement, and employing a loyal band of miscreants who would do anything for him. Bond fact number 2. In 2003, the American Film Institute declared Auric Goldfinger the 49th greatest villain in the past 100 years. So I'm imagining that's the only Bond villain on there, or perhaps there's not, maybe Blofeld should be on there. But so of all the villains in the last 100 years of film, Auric Goldfinger was 49th on there.
I would argue that he deserves to be a lot higher than 49th.
So do I. I'm imagining Darth Vader's 1, but I don't know. But I mean, 49th does seem a bit low.
I mean, who else is there? Darth Vader, obviously. Who else is there?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody apart from Darth Vader, to be honest with you.
Well, I guess it'll be from like people like I don't know, maybe Scarface and stuff like that. You know, maybe they'll have sort of villains like that. Perhaps, I'm not sure.
Whatever,
but,
American Film Institute.
Whatever.
Shut it.
Bond fact number 3. Megalomaniac Blofeld has been involved against Bond more than any other villain, with appearances in a total of 6 Eon Bond films to date. But might there be one more around the corner?
I would wager that there might be.
I was wager that there might be. Maybe even a flash of Blofeld, and then perhaps another one afterwards. Who knows? Bond fact number 5. Francisco Scaramanga was the first freelance villain in the series. So he was the one who...
I would wager that isn't right, because Goldfinger would be the first freelance villain, wouldn't he? Because he wasn't Spectre.
But he was working for himself, whereas Francisco Scaramanga would offer himself to contracts for kill.
You see what I've done? I've misinterpreted the term freelance. I'll stay quiet. I apologise. I bow down to your superiority.
No, it's not that. But you were right in terms of obviously he doesn't work for a company, but in terms of offering his services, Scaramanga is sort of the first freelance from that. Okay, so now I'll skip the others. So the majority of Bond villains, as we've said before, are characterised by an unusual physical deformity. Now I'm going to list them, and I'm going to include ones that we haven't talked about, just to see if we've covered them all. Okay, so we've got Dr. No having metal hands, Goldfinger's obesity, if you want to account that, Emilio Largo having the use of only one eye, probably, Blofeld's facial scar in You Only Live Twice, Blofeld's lack of earlobes in On Her Majesty's, Francisco Scaramanga's third nipple, Carl Stromberg's webbed fingers, Alec Trevelyan's facial scar in Goldeneye, Electra King's mutilated ear, Le Chiffre's hemolacria, which is obviously his weeping blood, and Raoul Silver's facial disfigurement from the cyanide. Now, can you think of any more? There seems to be a big gap between Carl Stromberg and Alec Trevelyan.
That's a good point. So I guess you could count Renard's weird thing with the bullet, maybe, because he's a bit scarred up, isn't he?
That was the other one that I was thinking of, but he's not counted as a villain in this. He's a henchman, isn't he?
He's a henchman, indeed he is. So, Sanchez wasn't disfigured. Neither was anybody in Living Daylights. Christopher Walken had was there something weird about him?
Yeah, he was the experiment of Nazi experiment during the war, prisoner of war camps, and the Dr. Karl Mortner sort of. So he has got that, but it didn't sort of give him a physical thing, I don't think.
Yeah, Kamal Khan looked all right. He was a handsome dude.
Yeah.
Christatos
so I
was
think
all right.
maybe
interesting.
Maybe that's it. But anyway, they're the ones I could think of. But JBL listeners, if you can think of any more, now we're talking about purely the main villains, then let us know, and we'll stick it on.
Good stuff.
Cool. So that's Bond facts for today.
So I think it's time that you beat me around the face with my lack of knowledge in this week's trivia round. Don't you, Chris?
I think you're actually going to do well on the first one. The second one is tricky, but we'll go with the first one. Okay,
right,
so
let's hear it.
What are the real names or the full names of the following James Bond villains? Okay, so we have Dr. No.
Julius.
Yes, Dr. Julius, no, indeed. This one is dead easy. We've said it a million times already. Mr. Big.
So you want Dr. Kananga? Is that what you're looking for?
Indeed, yeah. Dr. Kananga. Now, could it possibly be Dr. Ross Kananga? Because obviously they named Kananga after Ross Kananga, the thing. But I don't think Ross really suits the character, does he? All right, Ross.
I know, absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't really work, so maybe not. Okay, so now we're getting into the trickier territory. Renard. Do you remember what his real name was?
No, it was something Eastern European sounding or possibly Russian sounding. I can't remember it for the life of me.
Do you want to hazard a guess?
No.
Okay. Victor Zokas.
Bollocks. Now I know it as soon as you've said it. Yeah, dickhead. Of course it was Victor Zokas. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Okay, how about Gustav Graves?
That would be Colonel Moon, wouldn't it?
Yes. For an extra bonus point, do you know his full name? His first name?
Colonel I'm in a shit film Moon.
Yes. Oh my god, how did you know that? It's Colonel Tan Sun Moon, apparently.
Okay.
But there we are. But yeah, Colonel Moon, you definitely got that. Okay, now here's one. Have you remembered this one? Raul Silva.
That would be Tiago Rodriguez.
Oh, welcome.
I did better there than I thought I did, actually.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Renard's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you kind of think Victor Zokas. But yeah, no, well done. You blasted that one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now here is an interesting one. So what is the name of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's grandfather who appeared as a villain in a Bond film? What Bond film was it and what was his role?
Do you know what's annoying about this is that I've read this story so recently and I can't remember. I just can't remember. I'm going to hazard a guess and say, was he in You Only Live Twice?
That's the film.
Nice.
Brilliant.
Okay,
right,
cool.
now, think what as a character in that film could he be? Think of The Rock, and he looks quite similar to The Rock.
He was the sumo dude with the sofa fight. Is that him?
Yes, good man. Excellent stuff. Yeah, so basically, in the credits, he's listed as car driver. So he's basically, this is the guy who, after Bond, Henderson gets assassinated, Bond chases the assassin, strangles him, and then changes into his hat and those funny white shoes and the face sort of mask. Then he pretends to be injured. He goes in the back of the car. Then this guy drives into Osato's hotel. They go up in the lift. He takes off his face mask, and suddenly they battle. And then they do that thing with the sofa and the samurai sword, and then he eventually gets knocked out. But that was actually The Rock's grandfather, whose name was Peter Mavier.
Well, how about that?
There we go.
Good stuff.
Peter Mavier.
That's a good little bit of
It's
knowledge.
an interesting one, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But if you look at him again, you can see the facial sort of similarities to The Rock, actually. So it's quite cool. But excellent. You've blasted this one, man.
It's funny. Do you know
chuffed.
that was one of those things where that little flurry of information was just in the back of my mind somewhere, and it was more of an instinct rather than actually remembering what it was. But yeah,
Cool.
Good stuff. I'm happy with that. So my trivia question of the day is: which was the last Bond film to announce the title of the next film in the series during the closing credits?
Now, this one I really don't know. I remember Spy saying it was For Eyes Only instead of Moonraker. I'm assuming... I think they did anyway. I'm assuming Moonraker corrected that. And then Fiore's only... Did Fiore's only say be back with Octopussy or not? I don't remember it going as far as Living Daylights. No, it definitely wouldn't have gone as far as that. A View to a Kill, I don't think was either. James Bond will return in Octopussy. I don't think they had that either. Moonraker, James Bond. I think Moonraker.
Look at your face.
Sorry, I know it's wrong. That's why. Damn it. Sorry.
The answer is Octopussy.
Is it Octopussy?
Yeah.
So it says Bond will return with a View to a Kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it might even say From a View to a Kill, actually.
I think it probably does. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes, it does. Yeah, because that's a short story, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, well done.
Absolutely. So there we go. Good
Yeah,
stuff. I've
From
got
a
you.
View
I
to a
thought you were
Kill.
going to get that, especially it being Octopussy.
No. Yeah, no,
Good
I'd
stuff.
forgotten that, obviously. Oh, good question, though. Great question.
Cool. Next up, it's the Guess the Quote round. Everybody's favourite round, the Guess the Quote round.
Bond, 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 Bond. James Bond.
That was beautiful stuff.
Oh, well.
So
thanks.
I believe it was your quote last time, wasn't it?
It might have been, yes. And I believe I went something like this.
Now, I got that immediately because it's a brilliant performance, done very well. And I would hasten to add, I wasn't the only person that got it immediately because other people posted on Facebook as well. So you did well. Now, I don't know the name of this character, but it's the lady who says pigs, he will be boshed, and gets her top down and gets the geezer's face in there and in her boobies at the beginning of Living Daylights.
Indeed it is. Well done. Her name is Rasika Miklos. Rasika Miklos, yeah. So that was indeed. So, yeah, I'm glad I don't have to say that anymore.
Yeah, that was impressive stuff though, man. Good delivery.
Thanks, man. Cheers for that. Okay, so what's your new quote for this podcast?
I've got a good one for you today.
Okay.
And it goes like this. You ready?
Yeah.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Oh my goodness! Right, I think is it? Yes, I don't know. I've got two. Which one is it? Can you say that again for me?
Of course. My name's Bond. James Bond.
I think I know who it is. I don't know. I think I might know.
I think I'm going to make all my quotes in the future just the different actors doing the line in their different ways that they do it, and see if I can get you.
I think I know what it is. I don't know. Maybe I don't. There's two, but I think it's one. But I'll have to see.
Right.
Oh, that's amazing! Though, great performance again.
Thank you. We will find out next time what that is. Now, we did have a call out to JBR listener Ben Cherry last week. You'll remember he left a review saying he'd been listening to JBR since day one, but had never plucked up the courage to leave a quote. And we called him out, but he still hasn't got in touch. So Ben Cherry, come on, send us in a quote. Don't be shy.
Come on, Ben.
We'll keep calling you out until we get a Ben Cherry quote. So come on, get involved. But we did, however, get a quote from JBR listener Stu Bell, which we will play for you now.
G'day, Tom, and hello, Chris. Stu Bell here of London. Just wanted to say, first of all, really enjoy the podcast, so thanks a lot for all the hard work you put in. I do sort of hang out for my bi-weekly fix, so yeah, keep it up, because I'm sure things are going to get more exciting as the year goes on, and you know what approaches. Anyway, I really enjoy your little quotes section that you have, and it often has me really scratching my head because some of them are really obscure, so I thought I'd phone up with a quote of my own just to see if you could get it. So here goes. That's why I eat the peppers. So once again, that's why I ate the peppers. Anyway, cheers, guys. Keep up the good work and take it easy. Bye-bye.
So I'm not sure who that is. I know I've heard that line. I'm just not 100% sure who it is, but I think you've got that straight away, haven't you, Chris?
Yeah, well, it's quite, when I first heard the line, I thought, oh, that's a bit weird. You know, it's a bit of a strange line, but it clicks like the second after that, and once you sort of see it, then you can see it in your. Once you think of it, you can like visualize it really easily. But he did it really well. The actual delivery was really, really good. And I think it's this guy. No, it has to be this one because it's quite an individualistic line, isn't it? You're not going to hear it more than once in a Bond film.
Indeed.
Yeah, so great delivery, Stu. Hopefully I've got it, but we'll have to wait and see next time.
Good stuff. So send us another message, Stu, with the answer to that, and we'll play it on the next episode. So good work, Stu. So next up, it's time for the everybody's favourite theme tune. Guess the music cue.
I can't not dance when I hear that.
There you go. It's beautiful stuff.
Yes.
So last week we had this one. So I think most people will immediately know what film that's from and probably what sequence that's from as well. I would say that is the around the point where he's dispatched the guard, and he's run across the kind of the road to the big. I can't get my words out.
What film are we talking?
Okay, let's just start that first, Tommy. Goldfinger.
Yes.
And
well
he's
done.
running across to that big kind of like tank thing that he kind of sneaks into to put all of his plastic explosive on the barrels.
Which part of Goldfinger is it?
The pre-title sequence.
Yes, that's the one. Yes. So basically, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. So this is the point. I like this bit of music because it's got a bit of Bond sneaky to it, but it's also got a little bit of the Goldfinger feel. You can tell it's Goldfinger, but I love that scene where he's squeezing out the tube of explosive. I always think it's like toothpaste a little bit or something a bit weird. I don't know, but I love that scene, and it's a nice bit of music. It's not a difficult one, I don't think, particularly not for the film, to find the film, but I really like that bit of music. So do we know if a few of the JBR listeners got that one?
Maybe I don't recall that coming up on the Facebook page, but I'm sure Grice got it. I'm sure Wooly probably got it as well, and Lugo as well. Maybe even Antoinette. They've probably all got it. But there we go. So hopefully when we play this week's Guess the Music cue, they will all be wearing their JBR t-shirts to make it even more powerful.
I think you'll be able to understand it more if you're wearing a JBR t-shirt. Suddenly it'll twig, won't it? Because the power of the vinegar smell infuses memory of Bond.
There you go. Good stuff. The smell of Donald's armpits infused into the t-shirt has activated the brain. Absolutely. So without further ado then, let's play this week's Guess the Music cue.
Here it is.
So, you've stumped me on that one. Don't know what that is.
Well, it's a strange one because I was listening to this particular soundtrack the other day, and there's a bit which sounded quite similar to something else. So I'm hoping it'll catch out one or two people, but I'm not sure. But so it's not a super duper easy one, but it's quite a nice one, I think.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess we should tail off this episode with our Complete the Lyrics section, which it was my turn last time, wasn't it?
It was Complete the Lyrics section.
So as I've struggled to learn the rules of this game, and I've really struggled with it. Basically, the rules are: one of us gives the other one a line from a song, and then we have to say the next line from the song. Whereas usually I just say what the song is and think up one, but I haven't because that's not the rules.
I wish that was the rules for me this time.
So my lyric from last time was, "We know when to kiss and we know when to kill."
Now, if we were playing by your rules, I would say that is from... I think it's The World Is Not Enough. Or is
you are correct.
It's The World Is Not Enough. Okay, so we know when to kiss, we know when to kill. Somebody will, nobody will. Somebody will, nobody will. Know when to kiss, we know when to kill. And nobody will. There's something before that, though, isn't there? Oh, what is it? We know when to kiss, we know when to kill. You like hot lemon and nobody will? No, I can't remember the bit before.
You got the second half right, but the first bit isn't, unfortunately.
No, I know that. You know when to kiss, you know when to kill. If you can't shoot me now, then nobody will. It's not that either.
That's close, dude.
Is it really?
It is close.
Go on.
I will perform it for you.
What is it?
We know when to kiss and we know when to kill.
I thought you were going to perform it like a song.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll try and do my best Shirley Manson voice. We know when to kiss and we know when to kill. If we can't have it all, then nobody will. There it is.
Good one. If we can't have it all, there we go. Oh, tricky one. Well, I got like the last two words or something.
Yeah.
But
You were nearly there. Good stuff.
Yeah. Brain was kind of working, but not turned on. Okay, so my Complete the Lyrics section for the podcast this week is, shall I do it deadpan? The First Crystal Tears.
You I know what that is. What is that? Hold on a minute.
If I did it in tune, well, it wouldn't be in tune. But if I tried to say it in tune, you'd probably get it. Get the song.
Yeah,
at least,
do you know what?
definitely.
That's what's got me is I know it, but I don't off the top. Oh, that's gonna be one of those that bugs me. Well done, you've got me with good stuff. Okay,
Nice
so that's all for part 1 of the Villains of Bond podcast. Obviously, because there's tons to talk about with this, we will be concluding this stuff in a future episode. We might do it next time. We might do it a little bit later than that if we want to squeeze something else in. We just don't know at this point, but we will give you a hint of what we will be doing next Friday on the Facebook page. So make sure you come and get involved with that, and you'll get a little hint, which I must say, I loved your hint last week, dude. It was genius. For anybody who's not on Facebook, Chris said, here's a hint for what we're talking about next time. And basically, he had pictures of loads of secondary characters from Bond where their first letter of their name obviously was a letter. And if you looked at them in order, it spelled out villains. And it was great. It got some people. I know old Casper Ingalls got it, didn't he? Bless him. He was the first one to get it.
Casper was the first one. Yeah, Casper, congratulations. He's now been promoted to 00 status, so he's now Agent Ingalls. So well done to Agent Ingalls.
Good stuff.
But yeah, no, it was quite good. I think we had like Vargas, Irina from Goldfinger.
You had Lippy.
We had Lippy. We had Lupe Lamora. We had Adam here, who's quite a tricky one from Live and Let Die. We had from Tomorrow Never Dies, what's his name? Inga Bergstrom. Inga. We had Necros, and we finished with Strangways, which I quite liked actually.
Yeah,
Strangways.
very nice.
So yeah,
good stuff.
excellent. There we are.
Good stuff.
So yeah, so next week we'll give a little hint, and we'll see what. Like Tom said, it could be part 2, or it could be something else altogether. We'll have to wait.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of James Bond Radio, and we will see you next time. My name's Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye.